Chapter 96. In the hall, Jun Moxie was full of smiles as he cupped his fists and bowed in all directions. Thank you, thank you, thank you everyone for your support of the magnificent jewel hall. This young master feels the same and is infinitely honored. Now, this young master announces that the auction will continue. Everyone can freely bid, no need to be polite. Who do you think you are? Look at your words, you sound like the shopkeeper of the magnificent jewel hall. Truly despised to the extreme. Everyone cursed in their hearts. If white eyes could hit people, at this moment, Jun Moxie would have been smashed into pieces by the overwhelming white eyes. If contempt could hurt, then Jun Moxie would have been beaten black and blue by now. Finally, the mysterious man's voice did not appear, but another clear voice leisurely sounded out. The previous bid for the Blazing Heart Meridian was caused by Li Zhen from the Li family. The bid is invalid and will proceed according to the original price. Sure enough, it was 2 people. Jun Moxie smiled in his heart. Presumably, these 2 people did not agree with each other. Well, the person who came later should be a bit stronger. The purple-robed old man's face changed again, and then he said helplessly, the Blazing Heart Meridian, young Master Tang has already bid 300,000 silver taels. Is there anyone who bid higher than 300,000 silver taels? Even after asking several times, no one answered. Now that such a big thing had happened, who would dare to offend Jun Moxie, who was not afraid of heaven or earth, and Tang Yuan, who was a super prodigal? So, 300,000 silver taels going thrice. Sold. Dang, the hammer fell. The purple-robed old man felt depressed in his heart. He had presided over auctions for decades, but this was the most depressing he had ever felt. The 2 prodigal sons had completely disrupted the auction. Something that could have been auctioned for millions of silver taels was only sold for 300,000. If the purchase price was deducted, it was almost equivalent to giving it away. Fatty Tang experienced great joy and sorrow, and for a long time, he did not understand what was going on. Finally, Jun Moxie's heart was calm, and he slapped this disgraceful guy awake. On the other side, Dugu Xiaoyi curled her lips and said angrily, there's really no justice in this world. Why did that guy succeed again? He actually managed to obtain the spirit grass at such a low price. How hateful. So annoying, so annoying. Although she was cursing him, her 2 beautiful big eyes turned into crescent moons. It was as if she was laughing from the bottom of her heart, without the slightest bit of disgust. Princess Ling Meng looked at Dugu Xiaoyi suspiciously. She saw that Dugu Xiaoyi was suddenly in high spirits. She pursed her lips as she looked at Jun Moxie's hoodlum methods. However, she shook her head. There was no trace of disgust on her face. Instead, there was a look of appreciation. What was going on? Princess Raimu suddenly had an unimaginable thought. She could not help but be shocked. Xiaoyi, you, don't tell me you've fallen for this playboy. Hearing this, Dugu Xiaoyi's face instantly turned red. She wrinkled her delicate nose, stuck out her tongue, and explained with a flushed face, when did I fall for that kind of debauchee? When did I fall for that kind of debauchee? Humph, I can't wait to hang him up in my room and beat him with a leather whip. He actually dared to steal this girl's meteoric iron, he's really bold. If I don't teach him a good lesson, how can I get rid of the anger in my chest? I'll find an opportunity to teach him a good lesson. She fiercely raised her eyebrows, and gnashed her teeth. Princess Raimu's whole body felt weak. It's over, it's over. As a close friend of Dugu Xiaoyi for many years, how could she not see that Dugu Xiaoyi was acting tough on the outside but weak on the inside? She was trying to cover it up. She was obviously very happy, but she still had to pretend to be fierce. However, anyone could see through her real thoughts at a glance. Thinking about how Dugu Xiaoyi was originally depressed and distracted, but when she heard Jun Moxie's voice just now, she suddenly became lively. Everything seemed to be self-evident, and pointed to only one possibility. However, this possibility was too unimaginable, and it was simply a nightmare, Sister Xiao Yi. Oh my god. Seeing that Dugu Xiaoyi maintained her fierce expression for a short while, and then revealed her two little canine teeth, Princess Raimu became even more worried. Xiao Yi, you, what should I say about you? Sigh. What's wrong with you, such a playboy? What's wrong with you? Dugu Xiaoyi happily snorted twice, and blinked her beautiful big eyes. It's because he's a debauchee, that he needs to be taught a good lesson. Let him know how powerful this girl is, humph humph humph, hee hee. She couldn't help but laugh as she spoke, and her eyes were full of longing. It was obvious that she was already thinking about how to teach June Moxie a lesson, and had a look of longing on her face. Princess Raimu became even more worried. This matter was no small matter. Even if Dugu Xiaoyi were to blame her, she would still have to inform Great General Dugu Wudi as soon as possible. The only pearl of the Dugu family, and one of the most famous beauties in the capital, Dugu Xiaoyi, and that June family's playboy? What's going on? It's like a flower being inserted into cow dung, it's simply a waste of God's gifts. Not to mention anything else, but from the perspective of the royal family, the only grandson of the third generation of the June family and the most beloved granddaughter of the Dugu family, this was an absolutely unacceptable result, and it was bound to cause a change in the court. So, no. I must stop this matter. I can't let Xiao Yi be ruined in the hands of this playboy. Princess Raimu looked at Dugu Xiaoyi with a complicated expression, and then looked at June Moxie, and secretly made up her mind. The Blazing Heart Meridian could be said to be obtained at the cheapest price. June Moxie was somewhat excited, but in his heart, there was a burst of awe. Looking at the masters that he had met in his 2 lifetimes, there were few who could match up to these 2 hidden masters of the magnificent Jewel Hall. His current strength was not strong enough, and it would be difficult for him to match up to such a strong person. Next, eldest young Master Tang smoothly obtained what old Master Tang wanted, a volume of the Divine Wind Sword Record. June Moxie only glanced at it twice, and then threw it to Tang Yuan without any interest. His heart was filled with infinite contempt, this kind of fancy swordsmanship, and you actually have the nerve to take it out for auction. And you actually spent 2 million taels of silver. However, the next moment, June Moxie's body suddenly shook, and his face revealed a trace of surprise. After obtaining the Blazing Heart Meridian, June Moxie concentrated his spiritual sense on the boxes of the 2 princes. He knew that there were no other people in the boxes except for these 6 people, and his heart felt strange. Unexpectedly, he found that the 6 people in the boxes had all disappeared. It could be said that it was quite abrupt, and they absolutely did not go through the main door. However, June Moxie was able to conclude that these 6 people did not leave the magnificent Jewel Hall. Could it be that there were hidden passageways in the boxes? The next moment, June Moxie's spiritual sense discovered that the cold Yin Qi had just escaped, and had mixed into the crowd of people in the hall. Looking at it, he found that even their clothing and faces had changed. Even if someone were to look at them face to face, they would absolutely not be able to recognize that these were the people who had just entered the boxes. 3 of them were gathered in the middle, and the other 3 were on the other side, clearly divided. Each and every one of them had the appearance of a rich man, but the occasional flash of light in their eyes made June Moxie aware of the tension and desire in their hearts. It should be that they were about to make their move. However, in this batch of goods, what was it that was worth the covetous eyes of these 2 assassin groups? Even the 2 princes were involved. June Moxie took the list from Fatty Tang's hands and looked at the items that had yet to be auctioned. Finally, his eyes stopped on the last item to be auctioned, 30 tendons of a level 6 Xian beast, white-horned bull. Xian beast tendons. This should be it. Apart from this, the rest of the items were all ornaments and luxury goods. There was nothing too practical, and the assassin groups would never want such things. What they wanted was something that could pose a fatal threat to a person's life. Among these items, only the tendons of Xian beasts met their requirements. However, Why would they need so many tendons of Xian beasts? There was no reason for the assassins to switch to using whips to kill people, right? Could it be, to make strong bows and arrows? Thinking of this, Jun Moxie's heart thumped loudly. If the tendons of a level 6 Xian beast were used to make the bowstring, then the power of the bow and arrows would at least double. However, although the power of such a bow and arrows was amazing, if the strength of a level 9 Xian cultivator was not enough, they would absolutely not be able to draw it. Because of this, if a silver Xian or gold Xian expert were to use this bow, then it would undoubtedly become an absolutely deadly weapon. Even if it was a jade Xian expert, if they were to be caught off guard, then perhaps they would also fall into the trap. And with more than 10 of these bows and arrows, it was believed that it would be enough to threaten a master like Tian Xian. It seemed that this must be the case. Sure enough, as soon as the tendons of the Xian beasts were brought out, the 6 men who had just entered from the 2 princes' camps finally began to bid against each other, and the competition became even more intense. The price continued to rise, and in a short while, it had actually climbed to an unprecedented high of 5 million. At this price, the rest of the people who were participating in the bidding had all been driven away, but even if only the 2 sides were left to face each other, no one was willing to take even half a step back. After a tug of war, the price of the 30 Xian beast tendons had actually climbed to a high price of 13 million, and was finally obtained by the 3 assassins on the side of the second prince. This was almost the highest single item that had ever been auctioned in the magnificent jewel hall in recent years. Third young master, you see, this is only a batch of rank 6 Xian beast tendons. If it were 30 rank 6 Xian dan, then I am afraid that the price would be several times higher. Third young master, you should now know how important the thing that my family lost was. Tang Yuan smacked his lips, that is simply a priceless treasure. Oh. Jun Moxie replied absent-mindedly. His eyes scrutinized the 3 assassins who had obtained the Xian beast tendons and quickly disappeared from the crowd. He could not help but feel a little anxious in his heart. Since the last time the other side had dared to kill him, they had even dared to do the same to his own grandfather. And now, with this batch of Xian beast tendons, they could make powerful bows and arrows. Even if his grandfather was a master of the Tian Xian level, it would still be enough to pose a considerable threat to him. Let's go. Jun Moxie stood up, his heart was still calculating. If he could track the goods or find out where they had ended up, then that would be ideal. Chapter 97. What a pity. Jun Moxie felt some regret in his heart. The last time the old man had sent him back, he had left due to an urgent matter and would only return after half a year. If he was here, he would have come in handy. His tracking skills could be said to be top-notch. As for now, Jun Moxie looked at the few bodyguards that were following him. In all honesty, these people were carefully selected by Grandpa Jun. 1 gold-level Xian Qi practitioner and 7 silver-level Xian Qi practitioners. Their strength could be considered quite good. At least in Tianxiang City, they would be able to protect Jun Moxie. If Jun Moxie needed their protection. But Jun Moxie clearly knew that it would be pointless for them to follow the 3 assassins. Even if they were lucky enough to catch up, they would turn into 8 corpses in a very short time. According to Jun Moxie, the 3 assassins were all at the peak of the gold Xian Qi practitioners. What's more, they were assassins as a profession. Since the threat had been discovered, it must be thoroughly eliminated. Nurturing a tiger to bring calamity, that was something only a fool would do. What to do, no matter what, I must find a way to track them. At the very least, I must get my hands on those Xian beast tendons. Even if I can't get my hands on them, I must find a way to destroy them. After all, the consequences of these Xian beast tendons are too terrible. Jun Moxie's mind was filled with murderous thoughts. So, he naturally released a thick murderous aura from his spirit sense. And at this time, an extremely sharp pressure suddenly came crashing down, following the trace of killing intent that Jun Moxie had just revealed, aiming straight at him. This time, the target was very obvious. It was Jun Moxie himself. Moreover, it was very precise. Even Tang Yuan, who was beside him, was not affected in the slightest. This imposing aura was much stronger than that of the two mysterious figures who had spoken earlier. Jun Moxie was greatly surprised by this extremely powerful aura. This mysterious master from the magnificent Jewel Hall was definitely stronger than his grandfather, Jun Zhantian. Could it be that he was the legendary Shen Xian level master? Jun Moxie had even vaguely guessed the purpose of this coercion. Just now, when the three assassins had left the scene, his spiritual sense had fluctuated and followed the direction in which the three people had left, revealing a trace of involuntary killing intent. And it was this little bit of weak fluctuation, a trace of killing intent, that mysterious expert immediately sensed it. Due to the uniqueness of Xian Qi, experts below the level of Tian Xian were simply unable to use their divine sense to probe silently. That was why Jun Mo Xia had been so unscrupulous in using it. He hadn't expected that he would actually be caught red-handed this time. The cultivation of this mysterious person who had been hiding in the dark was very high. However, the magnificent Jewel Hall had always paid attention to the auction items. Since Jun Moxie was obviously following the assassins, it was not surprising that he was discovered. Especially since this person's spiritual power was so strong. However, the only thing that Jun Moxie was sure of was that this person had only discovered his divine sense and was not certain that he was Jun Moxie. That person must have the same divine sense as him. And Jun Moxie firmly believed that his art of unlocking heaven's fortune was absolutely unique in this world. Therefore, he was confident that even though he had exposed his murderous aura, he had not. However, Jun Moxie could clearly feel this powerful coercion. His heart was in a dilemma. Looking at the momentum of this divine sense, if he did not resist it, he was afraid that his mind would be greatly damaged. But if he used his divine sense to defend or counterattack, although his own divine sense was more magical than the opponent's, it was far from being as strong as the opponent's. What should he do? While he was hesitating, the powerful divine sense was already approaching his body. At the last moment, the Hongjun Pagoda in the depths of Jun Moxie's sea of consciousness suddenly shone brightly. From its motionless state, the Hongjun Pagoda flew into the air and rotated at a high speed. In a flash, the 7 colored rays of light blossomed in Jun Moxie's sea of consciousness like a deluge of heavenly flowers. He slowly welcomed the powerful divine sense that was attacking him. That powerful spiritual sense rushed over like lightning, but the moment it came into contact with the aura of the Hongjun Pagoda, it was like a small snowflake had suddenly fallen into a red-hot stove, and disappeared without a trace in an instant. Like a clay ox entering the sea, it disappeared without a trace, not even stirring up the slightest ripple. How could a mere supreme divine Xian mortal's energy compare to this kind of ancient treasure, the treasure left behind by China's #1 immortal, a mystical object that could split the heavens and split the earth? Even if all of the Shen Xians in this world were to join forces, it would still be a piece of cake for the mysterious Hongjun Pagoda. The Hongjun Pagoda slowly fell back to its original position. At the same time as it fell, Jun Moxie had also shut off his divine sense. But all of this, only the hitman Jun was aware of. Even the hidden expert who had been counterattacked was absolutely unaware of the mystery. In the underground chamber of the magnificent Jewel Hall, a plain-clothed old man was sitting cross-legged with his eyes closed. His body suddenly shook and he opened his eyes. There was an incredulous look in his eyes and his face was full of fear. Beads of sweat started to flow down his face. No matter what, he was someone who had already stepped into the ranks of the great master Shen Xian, but when his divine sense had pressed down on him, the person outside did not seem to have the slightest reaction, and had effortlessly resolved it. It was as if his divine sense was nothing more than a speck of dust in the eyes of the opposite party, not even worth mentioning. What does this mean? The peak of the Shen Xian. Only an expert at the peak of the spirit Xian realm would be able to defuse my divine sense attack so effortlessly. Moreover, I wouldn't be able to detect it. This is the only explanation for such a strange scene. The white-haired old man was so shocked that he blurted out, "How can there be such a person in the Tianxiang city? Could it be that something big has happened in the Tianxiang city recently?" However, the opposite party had only intended to resolve it, and had not made any counterattack against his divine sense. It seemed that he had no hostility towards the magnificent jewel hall, or perhaps, he knew the true background of the magnificent jewel hall. Or perhaps, he knew the true background of the magnificent jewel hall. Who is this person? No longer caring about shocking the world, the white-haired old man swept up from the praying mat, and like a wisp of wind, he chased after him. In the time it takes for a spark to fly off a flint, he had already chased out of the magnificent jewel hall, and circled around like a faint mist. The next moment, he had already appeared on the roof of the magnificent jewel hall, and was looking for something in all directions. After a long while, he shook his head in disappointment, and his body flashed and disappeared. However, he did not notice that at the door, he had just brushed past June Moxie. However, no one had actually seen clearly, nor had they noticed that the wisp of wind that had just blown past was actually a person. A super strong person. At the door, June Moxie was so scared that his whole body felt like he was drinking ginger soup on a hot day, and he was sweating profusely. In his heart, he secretly exclaimed, "It's really too strong." Little did he know that the old man's reaction was even worse than June Mocie's. He recalled the feeling of helplessness when his spirit sense had been completely melted. It seemed as if he was being slaughtered by the opponent. The old man's entire body was drenched in sweat. Even his calves were cramping. He was almost moaning as he said, "It's too powerful." This kind of peak powerhouse appearing in the Tianxiang city is certainly an indication that an earth-shattering event is about to take place here. No, I must send this news back as soon as possible. The old man thought as he quickly walked towards his study room. After a moment, a strange and small snow-white eagle flew from the roof of the magnificent jewel hall and shot towards the distance like an arrow. The white-robed old man looked anxiously at the direction where the bird had disappeared, and after a long sigh, he turned around and went downstairs. June Moxie also let out a long sigh, and hurriedly urged Tang Yuan to hurry up. He looked back with lingering fear, and secretly decided that he would not come back to the magnificent jewel hall until he was satisfied with his own strength. His mother, there was actually the existence of Xinxian. Did he really want to scare people to death? Not to mention the current him, even when he was at his strongest in his previous life, he might not have been able to provoke him. What a terrible magnificent jewel hall. June Moxie. A clear and melodious voice suddenly sounded from behind him. June Mo turned his head and saw Dugu Xiaoyi walking over with a fierce look on her face. She nodded her chin and said, "Ah, so you haven't, ah." She had wanted to say, "So you haven't died." But as the words came to her mouth, she suddenly couldn't say them. It seemed that she was extremely unwilling to associate the word dead with June Moxie. Even if it was a joke, it was too unpleasant to hear, and too inauspicious. "So, it's Miss Dugu." June Moxie smiled and looked at her up and down. "I haven't seen you for a long time. Miss Dugu has become more and more beautiful, and it really makes my heart itch." Tang Yuan was shocked, and couldn't help but want to turn around and run away. "My Uncle June, Ancestor June, how can your courage be so fat? You even dare to take liberties with this little miss? Could it be that you haven't been beaten enough before?" It must be said that among the people that June Moxie avoided, even his grandfather June Zhantian could only be ranked second. This was because this ruthless little miss had occupied the first place for a long time. This matter, Tang Yuan was very clear about. However, the series of events that happened next made Fatty Tang feel as if he was dreaming even after he returned to his own home. He didn't wake up. After listening to June Moxie's words, Dugu Xiaoyi unexpectedly didn't get angry. Instead, her pretty face turned red, and the fierce expression on her face disappeared. She shyly lowered her head and said in a low voice, "Really? Is it really better than before? I look in the mirror every day, how can I not feel it?" "What? Tang Yuan groaned and staggered. He had seen a ghost in broad daylight. Or perhaps the person in front of him was not Dugu Xiaoyi, but her twin sister. June Moxie also broke out in cold sweat. He suddenly felt a little creeped out. What was this little miss playing at today? He nodded his head like a chicken pecking at rice. Yes, 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 yes. It must be the effect of losing weight. Then I will continue to lose weight when I get home. Dugu Xiaoyi jumped up excitedly. When she landed on the ground, she seemed to remember something. Her pretty eyes widened and she said fiercely, June Moxie. What did you just say? You dare to take advantage of me? Your brain must be flooded with water. You really have guts. June Moxie increasingly felt that this girl was a little abnormal today. What was going on? Why did she suddenly change her face? Did she want me to live? At this moment, something squirmed in Dugu Xiaoyi's bosom, and a snow-white little head popped out. It had small ears, a small nose, a small mouth, a pink tongue, and a pair of moist eyes. It was indescribably cute, and its 4 tender red claws were clawing at something. It was actually a very small animal. Xian beast. Oh my god. Tang Yuan cried out in shock and widened his eyes. An iron-winged panther's cub. Brothers and sisters, the monthly votes ranking is in danger. From dawn until now, it has been harassed no less than 100 times. This is too damaging to our evil monarch's prestige. The 3rd update was delivered in advance, and the 4th update was delivered at night? Ha, brothers, Fengling is exploding. Everyone's monthly votes should also explode. Chapter 98. Iron-Winged Panther, a level 7 high-level Xian beast. Able to fly upon reaching adulthood, its 4 claws are capable of crushing iron and stone. Agile, fast, and extremely intelligent. An adult iron-winged panther can easily rival a primary-level Tian Xian expert. At its peak, an iron-winged panther can rival a level 8 Xian beast. Such a high-level Xian beast's cub is even more difficult to find. Who would have thought that Dugu Xiaoyi would have won? But looking at its tiny body, it is obvious that it is a newborn iron-winged panther cub. The Dugu family was very generous. They were actually able to obtain such a rare pet for their daughter to use as a pet. And now, this tiny iron-winged panther cub is trying its best to crawl out of Dugu Xiaoyi's embrace. A pair of pitch-black eyes looked at June Moxie, and there was a look of desire in them. Be good little white, don't move. Big sister will feed you something good. Dugu Xiaoyi felt that it was strange. Ever since her father managed to get this little thing, she had fallen in love with it. And because it was separated from its mother at birth, the little cub's body is weak and does not like to move. It has always been nestled in her embrace. Why is it reacting so strongly today and wanting to come out? So it is called Little White. June Moxie only glanced at it, smiled, and praised, what an adorable little fellow. June Moxie has always had no love for wild beasts. After a perfunctory reply, he turned around to leave. After all, he still has to find a way to track down those mysterious killers. Seeing him turn around, the tiny iron-winged panther suddenly squeaked and anxiously struggled out of Dugu Xiaoyi's embrace. Its 4 pink claws scratched with all its might. Looking at the direction it was trying to go, it turned out to be June Moxie and June Dashao. This little fellow seems to like you very much. Dugu Xiaoyi's eyes widened in shock. Ever since she obtained this iron-winged panther cub, she has brought this little thing with her to eat, drink, and sleep. She has never seen it act affectionately towards her. Today is the first time she has seen June Moxie. Why is it reacting like this? How strange. But I don't like it. June Moxie frowned as he glanced sideways at this so-called high-level 7th-level Xian beast and shook his head regretfully. Unfortunately, this little thing was really too small. If it could be doubled in size, then it would barely be enough to make a pot of stew. Displeased with June Moxie's words, Dugu Xiaoyi snorted. She hesitated for a moment, but seeing her little white's desire, she couldn't bear it anymore. Hugging the little body, she walked in front of June Moxie and begged, "Little White likes you so much, please hug it for a while. If you can make Little White happy, I will forgive you for taking advantage of me earlier." The closer June Moxie got, the more excited the little iron-winged panther cub became. It whimpered and stretched out its tender claws towards June Moxie, like a baby reaching out its little hands to be hugged by an adult. Its eyes were full of desire and joy. Hesitating for a moment, June Moxie sighed in his heart. With such an interruption, there was no longer any possibility of tracking down the assassins. Helplessly, he reached out his hands and took the cub. Once June Moxie was in June Moxie's arms, it immediately stretched out its arms and legs in satisfaction. It greedily inhaled a few breaths of June Moxie's scent, its pink little mouth letting out a satisfied hum. Its furry little head arched into June Moxie's arms and comfortably used his chest as a pillow. Unexpectedly, it was about to fall asleep. Looking at its appearance, it seemed like it had already made plans for a long time to live and work in peace and contentment. Watching from the side, Dugu Xiaoyi's pair of beautiful big eyes stared blankly. What was going on? Although this little thing was small, it seemed to know that Dugu Xiaoyi would be its future master ever since it arrived at the Dugu family and handed it over to Dugu Xiaoyi. Although it had yet to formally recognize its master, it no longer rejected June Moxie. On the contrary, it had never spoken to anyone other than Dugu Xiaoyi. Even Dugu Wudi, who had carried it back, was no exception. Why was it so intimate with June Moxie, whom it had just met for the first time? This was too abnormal. In fact, June Dashao was also puzzled. He felt that this matter was a little mysterious. He helplessly looked at the little guy that was preparing to live in his arms for a long time. Smiling bitterly, he said, "Is this a Xian beast that will never change once it recognizes its master? Moreover, it's at the peak of level 7. Why is it easier to trick than a puppy? Rumors can't be trusted." Dugu Xiaoyi's face turned red. She felt that she had lost face. Panting with rage, she took a step forward, and was about to take the little guy away from June Moxie's arms. June Moxie was too hateful. She didn't mind him taking advantage of her, but he still made things difficult for her. Damn it! But something even more unbelievable happened. Seeing that Dugu Xiaoyi was about to take it away, the little guy suddenly opened its eyes wide. Its eyes were full of hostility, and it let out a series of whimpering sounds. It fiercely opened its mouth, which had yet to grow any teeth, to threaten her. At the same time, its tender little claws firmly grabbed onto June Moxie's clothes. It was unexpectedly unwilling to leave the embrace of this stranger whom it had just met. Dugu Xiaoyi hugged its body, but she couldn't pull it away. Its 4 little claws seemed to be fixed on June Moxie's body. Even though its body was being pulled away, its claws were still tightly holding onto June Moxie's clothes. Its mouth was letting out loud squeaking sounds, and it was extremely unwilling to let go. Dugu Xiaoyi scratched her head, and looked at June Moxie in shock. Then, she suddenly said, "June Moxie, are you its mother?" June Moxie's face suddenly became full of black lines. What kind of nonsense is this? Am I its mother? Wouldn't that make me an animal? Not to mention that Dugu Xiaoyi and Tang Yuan didn't know what was going on. Even June Moxie himself was baffled. In fact, Master Dashao's body had the Hongjun Pagoda. The purest aura of heaven and earth had already transformed his body into something extraordinary. In addition, the art of unlocking the heavens' fortune had given him a wonderful effect. June Moxie's body was filled with the purest aura of heaven and earth. Ordinary people and ordinary Xian beasts couldn't feel the purest aura of heaven and earth. But, it was something that these high-level Xian beasts needed for their growth. Especially for these young high-level Xian beasts, it was the most irresistible and fatal temptation. It took a lot of effort to remove the little guy from its body, and 2 big holes were torn in its clothes. June Moxie ignored its anxious squeaking, and threw it into Dugu Xiaoyi's arms. "I'll give it back to you. You must hold it properly." Dugu Xiaoyi hastily and carefully caught it. She stared at him reproachfully. "Can't you be a little gentler? What if it falls?" The little guy was held in Dugu Xiaoyi's arms. It anxiously squeaked, and struggled with all its might. It kept moving towards June Moxie's side. Its eyes were moist, and it seemed as if there were tears in them. It looked very resentful. Dugu Xiaoyi's heart softened when she saw it. She was about to send it over again. June Moxie was startled. He jumped out of the way, and stood far away. He awkwardly said, "It's getting late. I'll go first." He turned around and left. Dugu Xiaoyi angrily stamped her feet, and muttered a few words. Suddenly, she rebuked Junior Leopard in her arms. "It's all your fault. Why are you so useless? Is he your mother or your father?" Junior Leopard innocently looked at her with his big eyes. Then, he suddenly lowered his head and looked at June Mocie's departing figure. He let out 2 low whimpers and listlessly leaned against her chest. He didn't have the slightest bit of energy left. All right. I'll bring you to play with him in a few days," Dugu Xiaoyi said. Junior Leopard was still very far away from the level of psychic ability. Naturally, he could not understand what she was saying, and did not have any reaction. Instead, it was Dugu Xiaoyi herself who, after saying these words, suddenly felt a sense of joy in her heart. Then, she felt a wave of embarrassment. She did not know why either. Where's Princess Raimu? She came out with me. How did she suddenly disappear?" Only then did Dugu Xiaoyi realize that her sister had disappeared. She could not help but frown. She was very surprised, and complained. "She did not even tell me that she left. That's too much." June Moxie, along with the guards, bid farewell to Tang Yuan, and went in the direction of the June residence. After turning the corner, he found a sedan quietly parked in front of him. There were dozens of guards surrounding it, and the lineup was much stronger than the last time. In front of the sedan stood a proud, lonely, and even somewhat miserable figure, Yi Guhan. Princess Raimu was actually waiting for him here. So it's Her Highness Princess Raimu coming personally. It's really a small world. We meet again. What a small world. June Moxie raised his eyebrows in astonishment. Yi Guhan's cold, electrifying gaze was directed at him as soon as he spoke. He couldn't help but frown as he listened to June Moxie's glib words. "June Moxie, I have a serious matter to discuss with you." Princess Raimu slowly came out of the sedan. Her face was cold, and her slender eyebrows were slightly wrinkled in disgust. Her face was cold and unapproachable. "You have a serious matter to discuss with me? Could it be that there's something improper? You have a favor to ask, and yet you're putting on such a face in front of me?" June Moxie cursed in his heart, but his face was overjoyed at the unexpected good news. "Fate has brought us together from thousands of miles away. Princess, please instruct me if you need anything. Whether it is a serious matter or not, I will do my best." "Ah! Could it be that the princess has finally responded to my infatuation and wants me to be the prince consort? The heavens really pity me, the heavens follow my wishes, the heavens make fools of me." A series of nonsense came out of his mouth. Yi Guhan snorted heavily. His eyes were filled with murderous intent. He shouted, "How dare you? How dare you talk nonsense? How presumptuous! How dare you? How dare you talk nonsense? How presumptuous!" June Moxie was not to be outdone. He shouted back fiercely, "Who do you think you are? I'm here to discuss serious matters with the princess. Is there any room for a nobody like you to interrupt?" Of course, June Moxie would not recognize Yi Guhan. The person who left the deepest impression on Jun Moxie that day was this Yi Guhan. However, it was not because of his superb martial arts. It was because Yi Guhan actually praised the leader of the assassins who committed suicide. Good man. This extremely pedantic evaluation made Jun Moxie very disdainful of this person of the same trade in this world. Naturally, he had a deep impression of him and despised him. Yi Guhan's gaze focused on Jun Dashao. The surrounding atmosphere suddenly became abnormally heavy. A desolate atmosphere suddenly arose. This was the prelude to Yi Guhan's violent killing. Chapter 99. Uncle Yi, please calm down. Princess Raimu hastily tried to mediate. Jun Moxie was injured and Grandpa Jun had almost turned the capital into a bloodbath. If he was killed by Yi Guhan, the consequences would be unthinkable. Although Yi Guhan was a master of Tian Xian, but even if Yi Guhan's strength was twice as high, if Jun Zhan Tian wanted to deal with him, it would be a piece of cake. It was not worth it to lose his life for a debauchee. Princess Raimu took 2 steps forward and said to Jun Moxie, "Young Master Moxia, please come with me, I have something important to tell you." Yi Guhan followed closely behind her like a shadow, not leaving her side for even a moment. Obviously, he was not at ease with Jun Moxie. At this moment, Jun Moxie suddenly felt a familiar cold feeling in his heart, but it quickly disappeared. It was the aura of the assassins that Jun Moxie had locked onto in the magnificent jewel hall. Jun Moxie's heart stirred. How did they come here? They took the Xian beast tendon and didn't run away. Could it be that they want to assassinate the princess in broad daylight? However, he clearly felt the aura of the 3 assassins at the corner of the street. Jun Moxie had a feeling of hope at the end of the tunnel. He had thought that after these 2 delays, it would be impossible to track them. Who would have thought that they would bump into each other here by chance? This is the will of the heavens. Looking at the guards behind him, if these people were to follow, forget about tracking them, I'm afraid that they would not even be able to take 2 steps and they would be tracked instead. Thinking about it, Jun Moxie's heart suddenly stirred, and he came up with a plan. Although Jun Moxie did not know why these assassins were here, since they had stopped, it was obvious that they had discovered Princess Raimu's convoy. There was no doubt about it. The reason why he stopped was probably because he felt the powerful aura of the Tian Xian expert, Yi Guhan, and didn't dare to act rashly. You guys wait here. I have some serious business to attend to with the princess. Jun Moxie said to the guards with a serious face, I want to talk about love with the princess and have a private conversation. Don't disturb us when we are doing our business. Hearing these shameless words, the guard leader gaped at him for a while before he finally lowered his head and answered, Yes, young master. He stuttered the 3 short words 3 times. In his heart, he secretly cursed, You're talking about love with the princess? Young master, your skin is really thicker than the average person's. Look at her royal highness, just scraping off the frost on her face would be enough to freeze you to death. I'm afraid that you are going to be abused because you don't want us to see you being embarrassed. We are not that bored, why would we be interested in following you at such a time? Serious business? You really have the guts to say that. Since you were born, how many serious things have you done? Jun Moxie followed Princess Raimu. In his mind, he could clearly feel that with every step the 3 of them took, the 3 assassins on the opposite side of the street had to take a step back. When they turned the corner, the 3 of them were already several tens of feet away at another intersection. But it seemed that this road was the only road they had to take, or for some other reason, they actually hadn't left until now. And all of this, Yi Guhan had obviously noticed. He sneered. Although he could not feel that the other party was an assassin, from the fluctuations of the other party's spiritual power, it was obvious that they were high-level Xian cultivators. This was a fact that did not need to be doubted. Although he did not take these 3 people seriously, his right hand was already gently pressed on the hilt of his sword. As long as the other party made the slightest movement, Yiguhan would immediately kill all three of them. This was related to Princess Raimu's safety, so Yiguhan would not allow any mishaps to happen to himself. A Sky Xian level powerhouse could run amok in the Tianxiang city without any misgivings. June Moxie, I want to warn you about one thing. Princess Raimu finally stopped in her tracks and stood at the corner. Her willowy eyebrows were slightly knitted, as if she was organizing her words. It seemed like she was having a hard time speaking. Your Royal Highness, please speak in person, I am all ears. June Moxie's back was leaning against the wall. He bent one of his legs and supported the soles of his feet on the wall behind him. His arms, one high and one low, drooped down. His head was tilted as he looked at Princess Raimu in a frivolous and sluggish manner. Yiguhan looked at his unbearable appearance, which made him look like a homeless man on the streets. He could not help but snort in disdain and turn his head away. He would rather not look at this unsightly appearance. He sighed in his heart. Jun Zhantian was a hero, but his only heir was such a coward. This is really sad and lamentable. It seems that the Jun family's downfall is already set in stone. What a pity for this family's reputation of loyalty. Jun Moxie also snorted in disdain in his heart. You may be a Tian Xian expert, but compared to me, you are still too inexperienced. You actually lack the least bit of vigilance. Young master's appearance may look like a hooligan, but it also looks like a dog taking a piss. However, the foot behind him can allow me to react and make subsequent changes at any time. As long as I exert a little force, I can ensure that I can advance or retreat freely regardless of whether I'm ascending or descending. My two hands, one high and one low, will help me maintain balance in any situation. As long as my foot is still on the wall, even if Master Shen Xian wants to kill me in front of me, I can still escape at the first moment. But look at you, a Tian Xian expert. Don't you know that if this young master wanted to take Raimu's life in that moment when you turned around, I could have killed her 3 times in that instant? Arrogant idiot. There's even a bodyguard like this who thinks that he's doing his job diligently. This is really sad and ridiculous. Young Master Mo Xia, Miss Dugu is my best friend, so. Princess Raimu paused and bit her lower lip. She seemed to be in a difficult position, but for the sake of Dugu Xiaoyi's lifelong happiness and not to be ruined by this frivolous libertine, she finally said in one go, so, I don't want you to have too much contact with Xiao Yi in the future. Do you understand what I mean? This young master doesn't quite understand. Jun Moxie simply shook his head. Your Royal Highness is very knowledgeable, but this young master is a debauchee. I don't have such knowledge. Your Royal Highness's words are so vague and unfathomable that this young master really can't understand. Why don't your Royal Highness explain it clearly? Wouldn't that be better? Jun Moxie was speaking the truth, and he did not have any intention of playing dumb. If it was the original Jun Moxie, he would have immediately understood it. However, the current him, with his extremely slow EQ from his previous life, could not even tell that Dugu Xiaoyi had feelings for him. He was still feeling melancholy in his heart, wondering how he could avoid that unruly girl who could change her face at any time. It would be a miracle if he could understand Princess Raimu's hidden words. Young Master Mo Xia, there's no point in playing dumb. Do you really not understand what I'm saying? Princess Raimu frowned and was very angry in her heart. Whether you understand or not, Xiao Yi is definitely not someone you can match. Today, I might as well make this clear to you. Don't pester Xiao Yi in the future, or else you'll be asking for trouble. Ha! Jun Moxie laughed out loud and squinted his eyes. Your Royal Highness, aren't you being too nosy? Could it be that you're her mother? Suddenly, he replied with an, oh, and his shoulders trembled as he laughed weirdly. So you're jealous, waha, you pervert. Princess Raimu was so angry that her body trembled and her lips started to tremble. To an unmarried lady, what Jun Moxie said was the most vicious mockery, not to mention the fact that she was a princess. Girl, please understand the situation first. Who's pestering who now? Understand? Motherfucker, only those who have investigated the truth have the right to speak, understand? You're a princess of a country, but you don't even understand such a simple logic. No wonder people say that big breasts have no brains, although your breasts aren't big. Both of them had a sneer on their faces as they parted. June Moxie tilted his head, and muttered, "You really have nothing better to do, there are senseless people everywhere, and you're not my wife, and you're telling me to pick up girls? You're a dog biting a mouse, and you're meddling in other people's business." Princess Raimu's lungs were about to explode with anger, and she stared at him with her beautiful big eyes, and her towering chest was heaving up and down violently. She was so angry that she almost vomited blood, and didn't want to say another word, and turned around to leave. She stomped her feet fiercely as she walked, and it seemed as if she was going to break through the ground under her feet. God knows if I'll die of anger or go crazy if I stay here for a while longer. It's really hard to understand, such a despicable, shameless, filthy, and disgusting thing. How could Dugu Xiaoyi's heart be bewitched, and actually fall in love with him? Yiguhan's face was ashen, and he floated to the front of June Moxie. Lenglang said, "Trash like you, I've always disdained to lay my hands on you, but you're really too hateful. Today, I'll teach you a lesson on behalf of Senior Duke June. I'll also let you know that not just anyone can be toyed with by you." He had been watching and listening from the side, and had long reached the end of his patience. To be able to endure until now before making his move, it could already be considered as a very cultured person. June Moxie's mouth twitched, and he sneered, "Pay. Who do you think you are? To think that your mouth can represent an important minister of a country, a Grand Duke of the Empire? What a joke." His heart was filled with endless disdain. Towards this kind of person who would spout so much nonsense before making his move, June Moxie had long since defined him as an idiot. Especially when it's an assassin, that's even more unforgivable. Yiguhan's eyes widened, and he was so angry that his eyes turned blue. He raised his palm up high, and was about to slam it down. He finally understood what Princess Raimu was feeling earlier. This kid was really asking for a beating. The Tian Xian master is hitting someone. The Tian Xian master Yiguhan is bullying someone. Someone come quickly. Someone come quickly and see how the Tian Xian master is beating up an ordinary person who doesn't even have the strength to truss a chicken. It's truly captivating. Help me ah. Before Yiguhan's palm could land, June Moxie did not want to expose himself, but he also did not want to suffer a loss. A wise man does not fight when the odds are against him, and he had already shouted out. His voice was loud and clear, and the words he used were also extremely sharp. Yiguhan's pale complexion, which had never changed for more than 10 years, instantly turned red. Half of it was angry, and the other half was flushed. Too shameless. Too shameless. How could a person be so shameless to this extent? It was simply outrageous. You. Yiguhan's raised hand became pointing at June Moxie, and his fingers were trembling with anger. To a Tian Xian master, this was simply unimaginable. After holding it in for a long time, Yiguhan actually squeezed out a sentence that was very classic in June Moxie's previous life: a person cannot be so shameless to this extent. Although he could feel the terrifying aura coming from Yiguhan, he knew that it was best not to provoke this person at this time. But after hesitating for a long time, his desire to protect his master prevailed. He finally mustered up the courage to open his mouth and ask, "Your Excellency. I wonder if my young master, get lost." Yiguhan's eyes were bloodshot. His long white hair stood upright, and pierced into the sky. He was so angry that he leaned against the railing and let out a long and majestic roar. It shook the heavens and the earth a few times. The faces of the people in front of him changed color. Their hearts were beating wildly, and they couldn't keep their footing. This showed the strength of Tian Xian's master. His anger had finally been vented. It had exploded, and poured out in torrents. If he didn't vent it out, he was afraid that he would suffer internal injuries. A long and loud roar shook the entire city. Countless experts in the capital were instantly aware of this. Suddenly, a powerful spirit consciousness soared into the sky, and hovered over the capital. Everyone was very curious. The aura of the master who let out this roar was so strong that he was at least at the peak of the Earth Xian level. What could have made such an expert so angry? The anger contained in this roar was so strong that it could burn the heavens and the earth. This was something that everyone could hear. At the entrance of the small tavern, Old Song suddenly opened his muddy old eyes. There was a look of astonishment in his eyes. Why does this sound like Xiao Ye's? The guards watched as Yi Guhan and Princess Raimu's carriage left. Then, they rushed over, and saw that the carriage was empty. Their young master's shadow was nowhere to be seen. They couldn't help but complain. Did this strange guard kill the young master? Did he even destroy the evidence? Jun Moxie nimbly sneaked out from the shadows like a shadow, moving at high speed through the alleyways. His senses had long since spread out, closely following the group of assassins in black who were also moving at high speed. Jun Xia moved at a high speed, both his hands moving continuously. After moving for a distance of a few zhang, his face had completely changed. He now looked like a 30-something-year-old middle-aged man. His hair was exceptionally messy. There were countless people like this in the streets and alleyways of the imperial capital. Trying to find someone like this within the crowd was a very difficult task. After a few turns, Jun Moxie dashed out of the street. His footsteps seemed slow, but they were actually very fast. He quickly passed through a clothing store. His speed didn't slow down at all, but the white robe on his body had already turned into a navy blue commoner's clothing. The owner of the clothing store was oblivious to it. He was still happily soliciting customers. The assassins in front were obviously very cautious. After making several turns and detours, they changed their original clothes and dressed like ordinary businessmen. They walked eastward at a moderate pace, chatting as they walked. From time to time, bursts of laughter could be heard. They seemed to be chatting very happily. From the faces of the three, they also had the wretched expressions of men. From an outsider's point of view, they should look like they were talking about women. It was the standard look of a brothel customer. The standard of this assassin group was really not simple. Jun Moxie sighed in his heart. In his previous world, any assassin would be able to understand this kind of disguise. However, in this world, these two people could actually do it so naturally. It was obvious that they were well trained. What was even rarer was that these two people had concealed their murderous aura so well that not even a drop of water could leak out. This was the truly brilliant part. If it wasn't for his spirit sense that could detect the coldness of the assassins, it would be almost impossible to track them. Or it could be said that apart from himself, no one else could use the same method to track them. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, there was a slight sound of water in front of them. There was also a burst of melodious sound of a silk pipe. There was also the faint sound of a woman singing. The faint smell of a woman's cosmetics spread out. It seemed that these assassins had arrived at their destination. The Spirit Fog Lake. Jun Moxie finally understood why these people had to pass through that street. That was the only way to the Spirit Fog Lake. If they were to change the direction, they would have to go in a big circle. But if it were him, he would rather go in a big circle. That way, he would have to go in a big circle. Along the way, Jun Moxie had already changed his clothes 3 times. Even his height and body shape had changed 3 times. The Tianxiang City, the Spirit Fog Lake, is a paradise for all men. There are countless beautiful women here, thin and fat, everything you could think of. As long as you can think of it, it will certainly be here. Here, as long as you had enough money, you could do whatever you wanted. You could do whatever you wanted. You could do whatever you wanted. You could do whatever you wanted without any scruples. But, if you don't have any money, then, it's better to do it as soon as possible. Even middle-aged professional women who are as fat as Tang Yuan won't take a second look at you. Naturally, there were many legends in this world, such as gifted scholars and beautiful ladies, talented ladies from the brothel, and lovers, but legends were just legends after all. Legends were always very beautiful, but unfortunately, reality was unusually cruel. Many scholars from poor families thought that they were handsome and talented, so they came here with the appearance of a romantic scholar, trying to compose a fairy tale of a talented scholar and a beautiful woman. They were full of the hope that they would meet a beautiful woman who would fall in love with them at first sight, and fantasize that they would be able to jump up and rely on their talent and face to live off a woman, but unfortunately, after the pitiful few copper coins in their pockets were emptied, they were mercilessly thrown out one after another. Some were even thrown into the spirit fog lake and drowned half to death. It was very disgraceful. This reminded them that although the legend was something that people yearned for, but if you didn't have enough money in your pocket, the legend would only send you to your death. Moreover, you would die a muddled and useless death. What kind of place is a brothel? As the saying goes, prostitutes are heartless, and entertainers are unrighteous. Brothels are the place where the former are the most common. Which man who comes to a brothel is willing to keep his chastity for his wife? Coming to a brothel and pretending to be a love saint is even more disgusting than being a prostitute. How could the women of the brothel who are accustomed to the fickleness of the human world not see the evil intentions hidden under the gentle and refined appearance of these so-called gifted scholars? This kind of dream is better not to have. No wonder Tang Yuan once said that if you see a bad guy, you will be able to kill him with a single slash, but if you see a hypocrite, you will continue to torture him until his spirit collapses. These words have deeply resonated with my heart. Jun Mo Xia stuck close to the wall to conceal himself, leaned against the tree to conceal himself, and stroked the grass like the wind. He was obviously a living person, but he was like a shapeless shadow, and it seemed as if anything could become his cover. Not only did the three killers not notice him, but even the pedestrians on the road didn't notice him either. He only saw the three men in front of him, with a lustful and extravagant appearance, walking like nouveau riche into a very luxurious pavilion by the Spirit Fog Lake, Ni Chang Pavilion. After their group entered, a nearby pleasure boat slowly glided over and stopped on the water side of the Ni Chang Pavilion, motionless. Jun Mo Xia's heart skipped a beat. After looking around for a while, he saw that there was actually no one else on the boat other than the boatman. It seemed like he was waiting to receive someone. This situation seemed a little strange. Besides, the person had just entered and the pleasure boat that had been parked on the other side had already approached. Isn't this too much of a coincidence? Jun Moxie clenched his teeth. I'll bet on this. A gentle breeze blew, and the reeds on the surface of the water fluttered in the wind, adding a dreamlike feeling to the dusk. It made everything in front of them seem so unreal. Jun Mo Xia took advantage of the floating reeds, and his whole body seemed to melt into the reeds that filled the air. His body moved, and he quickly floated to a distance of about 30 meters. He took cover behind a thick willow tree on the shore, and conveniently broke off 2 reeds. Then, he silently slid into the water. It was as if he had fallen into the water as a feather. In fact, he didn't even have the slightest ripple. This was because the young Master Jun had made great progress in recent days. In fact, he wouldn't have been able to achieve this much if it had been half a month ago. Chapter 101. Slowly sinking to the bottom of the lake, Jun Moxie opened his eyes. In front of him was the azure color of the water. After identifying the direction, he gently slid and dived towards the pleasure boat. Not long after, he felt his eyes darken and knew that he had arrived at the bottom of the pleasure boat. Jun Moxie quietly floated up, one hand clasping tightly to the bottom of the boat while the reed in his hand was in his mouth. With a breath of true energy, the long reed was extended to the side of the boat. A gust of extremely fresh air instantly passed into Jun Moxie's lungs, which were almost suffocating, and he immediately felt a sense of relief. If there were any mistakes in this series of actions, all previous efforts would be in vain, and it would also attract the enemy's attention. It might even lead to a fatal disaster. Jun Moxie did not make any further moves, but just waited quietly without the slightest bit of impatience. All the guesses and doubts in the past had now disappeared. He didn't care whether those assassins boarded the ship or not. Since he had chosen his target, he would never regret it. Intuition told him that this was the boat. Therefore, he had endless patience. As long as he could still breathe, he could continue to wait. Just like in his previous life, he relied on his intuition to track down and kill, or lurk, waiting quietly. At this moment, he was that king of killers again. Evil Monarch. After a long time, there was finally a sound. A few women's laughter and a man's rough voice sounded, talking and laughing along the way. The boat slightly swayed, and above Jun Moxie's head, thumping footsteps sounded. Several people walked onto the boat one after another. 1, 2, 6 people. Jun Moxie silently counted. And there were 3 more than before. If the 3 killers from before had all arrived. As soon as the killers arrived on the boat, the unique gloomy and cold atmosphere immediately caused a reaction in Jun Moxie's mind. In this ice-cold water, feeling that gloomy and cold killing intent, Jun Moxie suddenly had a subtle feeling of familiarity and nostalgia. This was his own world. The life of an aristocratic family was luxurious and comfortable. But Jun Moxie, the king of assassins, yearned for freedom. He wanted to be like the wolf king of the Great Prairie, roaring proudly across the world. Although danger lurked in every corner, he was still the king of the world. That kind of pain contained excitement, and he enjoyed loneliness in solitude. He ventured alone to the ends of the world, holding his sword in front of his chest and staring coldly at the heavens. 10 steps to kill a man, 1,000 miles unstoppable. This was Jun Moxie's biggest dream. But unfortunately, with his identity in this world, the possibility of Jun Moxie having such a chance was extremely slim. After the 6 people entered the cabin, they could only hear the sound of teapots and teacups gently touching, followed by the sound of several people drinking tea. No one spoke, only a few women chuckled from time to time, speaking softly and tenderly. After a long time, a hoarse voice sounded, "Miss you, when will Lord Lu be able to come? It's not a good idea for my brother to wait here. The assassination attempt on the princess last time was a serious crime. The entire city is still searching for him, and the wind hasn't even slowed down. And now, we are carrying this Xian beast tendon, which is hard to buy even with 10,000 gold coins. It's also something that people covet, in case, this." A woman's voice softly laughed and said in an indifferent tone, "Lord Xiao, you're worrying too much. This is the Ni Chang Pavilion. Don't tell me you don't know what kind of place the Ni Chang Pavilion is. The Ni Chang Pavilion is naturally safe, but it's better to be safe than sorry. The previous assassination attempt caused the entire city to be in a state of panic, and we had no way to retreat. We've already been delayed for a long time, and now we have this Xian beast tendon with us. It's not a good idea to stay in Tianxiang for a long time." The man's surname Xiao seemed a little embarrassed as he said in an embarrassed tone. "Lord Xiao, I'm afraid you want to leave as soon as possible, but I'm afraid it's not because of the government search. What about the failure of the last mission? Could it be that Lord Xiao intends to shirk his responsibility?" The woman's words were full of sarcasm. However, Lord Xiao only snorted in a low voice, and didn't open his mouth to refute. Instead, another man angrily said, "Miss Yu's words are wrong, and you're deceiving us. How can we be responsible for the failure of the last mission? If it weren't for your inaccurate information, how could we have been defeated? If we had known that the princess had a Tian Xian expert as her bodyguard, how could our organization have made such an arrangement? How could the mission be a trifling level 3 mission? With the strength of our previous plan, to kill the princess under the protection of a Tianxian expert is undoubtedly a lunatic's ravings. Even if it's the second master, he has to give an explanation to our hall master for this loss. The woman was silent for a moment, and then slowly said, "You've all received money. Isn't it a fact that we asked you to kill a silver Xian level princess? Moreover, we've expended a lot of effort to divert the majority of the strength of the princess away, and it can be said that we've created the most convenient conditions for you. If you're still unable to succeed, then this seems to be your own problem. As for the so-called Tianxian expert, let's not talk about whether or not he has such a person. Even if he does, it's already your problem. We've already paid enough money, and all we want to see is the result we want, and not the so-called reason to shirk responsibility." After a pause, the woman could clearly be heard standing up, and slowly pacing back and forth. Her voice was low, but clear, and clear. "This servant is but a little girl, there's no point in telling me about this matter. Don't be impatient, wait for Lord Lu to arrive, and you can tell him." She sat down on a chair, and picked up her teacup without batting an eyelid. For a moment, the atmosphere in the cabin was incomparably awkward. The assassins had all suffered this kind of humiliation. Seeing the woman's sophistry, one of them immediately snorted angrily, and was about to flare up. But at this moment, the bow of the pleasure boat slightly moved, and two people walked in. June Moxie, who was crouching at the bottom of the cabin, felt that the atmosphere in the cabin had suddenly become dignified the moment these two people entered. Presumably, these two people were people of great status, and were certainly first-rate experts. June Moxie only felt that the scene in front of him gradually darkened, and it was already night. On both sides of the Spirit Fog Lake, lights of all colors were reflected on the surface of the water. "What's going on?" The newcomer saw the strange atmosphere in the cabin, and asked in a deep voice. His voice was very dignified. His tone revealed the bearing of someone who had been in a high position for a long time. "Darren Liu, our Blood Sword Hall needs an explanation for the assassination the day before yesterday." The leader of the assassins with a hoarse voice said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner, "Why has no one ever mentioned that there was another Tianxian expert guarding Princess Raimu? This matter caused the complete annihilation of our organization's manpower. It can be said that the loss is enormous, and this is something that has rarely happened in our Blood Sword Hall in recent years." "Oh. Does Hallmaster Zhao mean to say that the assassination mission was not completed, and is instead blamed on us?" That Darren Liu was neither fast nor slow, and his tone seemed to contain a bit of a smile. "Then, the prestige of the Blood Sword Hall will be discounted." The leader of the assassins said in a hoarse voice, "Darren Liu, you are also a first-rate expert. What does this matter have to do with the prestige of our Blood Sword Hall? Our Blood Sword Hall has always accepted people's money to eliminate disasters. No matter who it is, we will kill them without hesitation. However, the execution of the mission has always been based on the accurate information provided by the employer. Then, the difficulty of the mission can be determined, and the corresponding manpower will be sent to kill in one blow." He spoke passionately here, but June Moxie, who was below the cabin, almost despised him to death. As an assassin, and a member of a long-established assassin organization, how could he believe the employer's information? This was the biggest joke in the world. Even if the employer's information was absolutely accurate, the assassin organization and the assassin himself would still need to verify it in detail. Believing the employer was tantamount to taking one's life as a joke. That person continued to say, "But now, in the matter of Princess Raimu, whether you concealed or overlooked the extremely important fact that there was a Tianxian expert. If Hallmaster Darren had known that there was a Tianxian expert involved, how could you have only sent two insignificant gold-ranked assassins? I'm afraid that Hallmaster Darren would have personally taken action. The reason for this is because of your inadequate information. How can you blame our Blood Sword Hall? Let's not talk about other things, this assassination absolutely cannot be classified as a level 3 assassination. His words were very fierce, and his tone was also quite impolite. However, Lord Lu surprisingly did not get angry. He pondered for a long time before saying, "Are you sure? That person is really a Tianxian expert?" "Absolutely." The leader of the assassins nodded with great certainty. "Not only that, I heard that the Tianxian expert's flying knife was as blue as the sea and sky. It must be the peak of Tianxian's cultivation. Moreover, the flying knife was filled with Xian qi, but when he attacked, it was light as a feather without any power. The intention was probably to deter. This kind of control ability is almost at the level of the legendary Supreme Xinxian's control. This Tianxian expert, I dare to guarantee that although this person is at the peak of Tianxian, he has already taken one step into the threshold of Supreme Xinxian." The more the leader of the assassins spoke, the more he rejoiced. Fortunately, he did not personally participate in this operation. Otherwise, he would have already become a cold corpse. The more he thought about it, the more he felt that he had truly taken a trip to the gates of hell. The more he spoke, the more fear he felt. In his heart, his opinion of this Lord Lu in front of him increased. In the end, the expression in his eyes became somewhat strange. Did he trick us to come here to die? Tianxian peak expert. Lord Lu stood up and paced back and forth. He frowned and muttered to himself, when did such a person appear in the palace of the capital? Why are they also? It is really strange. Extremely strange. Lord Lu. May I ask how this matter should be resolved? The assassin in black saw that he did not speak for a long time and could not help but ask. Oh, since this matter is absolutely true, then this matter must be reported back to Second Master, and then we can make other plans. Lord Lu muttered, with the protection of a Tianxian expert, a normal assassination would no longer have any effect. He raised his head and looked at the three people in front of him. Although he did not say anything, the meaning behind his words was clear that these people were no longer of sufficient weight. Lord Lu is right. We also know our own limits. With such a Tianxian expert around, it is impossible for us to assassinate the princess. The leader of the assassins suppressed the anger in his chest and said, however, people who can't even obtain information, don't they seem to be of no use? Oh. Ha ha ha. Lord Lu stared blankly for a moment before laughing loudly. Then, he changed the topic and said, however, you didn't even manage to kill Jun Mo Xie. It's a pity that such a good opportunity is lost. Chapter 102. What a pity. What a pity. It would be great if Jun Moxie had died. It would have made Jun Moxie's heart ache for a while. Lady Yu said while gnashing her teeth. She seemed to be extremely regretful when she heard that Jun Moxie hadn't died. Jun Mo Xie, who was in the cabin, carefully searched his mind. He was very puzzled. He didn't remember offending this Lady Yu. So, why does this woman's tone sound as if she had been raped by Jun Moxie 100 times? Lord Lu pondered for a moment, and then said, this matter has already reached this point. So, I'll put an end to the matter of hiring you to assassinate the princess for the time being. Moreover, I've successfully obtained the Xian beast tendons. So, I'll try to arrange for you to leave Tianxiang City. As for the rest of the matter, I will report back to Master and see how he will arrange it. Perhaps he will cooperate with your noble hall again. I will trouble you to send my regards to the Blood Sword Hall Master when you return. Also, I will say this, although this matter has failed, the second master is still very grateful. When he said the last sentence, his voice suddenly became extremely solemn. Obviously, these were the words of the so-called second master. Jun Moxie silently curled his lips. Who doesn't know that the so-called second master is the second prince? Why do you all look so mysterious? Thank you, Lord Lu. I will certainly convey your message. As for how to leave, we have other ways. We will take our leave now." Then, the three men stood up and cupped their hands in salute. "The Xian beast tendons have been placed in the hands of Lady Yu, 30 tendons are not a small number. We will come back to take back what belongs to us." Lord Lu chuckled and said, "You're welcome. When you return, I would like to ask if the Hall Master has considered the matter regarding the assassination of a certain emperor. No matter what the result is, please inform us as soon as possible. I'm counting on you." "Yes." The three of them filed out and disappeared into the night in a flash. Lord Lu and the others did not go out to see him off. "Lady Yu, after that incident, the palace has already undergone a major purge, and the three of you have lost quite a bit of manpower. However, this is not a big deal to us. After all, no matter how one looked at it, this matter was caused by boss's people. So, you have to finish what we agreed on as soon as possible. Once the news spreads, arrange as many people as possible to go in. Remember, it must be one-way communication." Lord Lu lowered his voice and said hurriedly. "Yes, Lord Lu and Second Master can rest assured about this. We have prepared for a long time, and the ones we have chosen are all virgins." Lady Yu's gentle voice sounded, "Gidge, Lord Lu, if not for Second Master's important matter, even you would like to go to the palace to play for a few days. Ha, with Lady Yu's outstanding beauty, who could resist your temptation?" Lord Lu laughed and lowered his voice. "Second Master has instructed us to make crossbows with Xian beast tendons as soon as possible. They may come in handy at any time, and cannot be delayed for even a moment. This matter is very tense at the moment, and all parties are watching us. So, it is not convenient for us to come forward. Everything is in your hands now." Lady Yu replied in an embarrassed manner, "Of course I know this, but these Xian beast tendons are too rare. If we use ordinary steel as the material, I am afraid that it will not be able to make the best use of them. But, we cannot find the Divine Weapon Catalogue in the capital to make them. Although the Divine Weapon Catalogue is excellent in craftsmanship, it is a pity that a tall tree attracts the wind. The only one that can do this business is Jiangnan's Xiao Trading Company. I have already sent people to contact them before the auction, but I have yet to receive a response. Well, the sooner this matter is settled, the better. I would rather pay double the salary, but it must be done as soon as possible." Lord Lu cautiously said, "This kind of thing will be of great use to us in the future. Second Master has spent a sky-high price, and even took a great risk to ask the Blood Sword Hall to exchange for these Xian beast tendons. We cannot afford to have any mishaps. This subordinate is naturally aware of this." Lady Yu smiled gently and said, "Lord Lu, I do not know what the outcome of the matter that I asked Second Master for." Lord Lu's tone was quite difficult as he said, "Lady Yu, that Jun Zhantian is the pillar of Tianxiang's military. It is easier said than done to assassinate him. Even the Blood Sword Hall's Hall Master, a person who dares to assassinate a princess and a prince, is still hesitating on this matter. If we use Second Master's men to frame Jun Zhantian for treason, it will definitely be effective since His Majesty is furious after Jun Zhantian's ruckus in the capital." Lady Yu's tone was extremely resentful. "Even in my dreams, I dream of Jun Zhantian's family being destroyed. This is obviously an excellent opportunity. How can Second Master let it go so easily? That will not do." Lord Lu flatly rejected this proposal. "If we make a move against Jun Zhantian, at least half of Tianxiang's military will be mobilized. We can target Jun Zhantian himself, but we cannot target his men. Second Master does not want a fragmented Tianxiang kingdom. That Jun Zhantian has caused the destruction of my country and my people. Hearing you say this, could it be?" Lady Yu's tone was somewhat disappointed. "If Second Master cannot do this for me, then why should we rely on him?" "How dare you?" Lord Lu sternly scolded, and then immediately slowed down his tone and said, "Lady Yu, this matter cannot be rushed. The Blood Sword Hall is currently hesitating. Wait until they have finished their business in the Yutang Empire, and the leaders of the Blood Sword Hall will meet. At that time, Second Master will certainly have a way to make them submit. The three leaders of the Blood Sword Hall all have the cultivation of Tian Xian, and are the most mysterious leaders. It is said that they are super experts on par with the Supreme Shen Xian. Dealing with a mere Jun Zhantian is definitely not a difficult matter. Besides, Jun Zhantian is already at the end of his life. What's wrong with letting him linger on for a few months? Lady Yu snorted, still somewhat indignant, but did not utter another word. Jun Moxie's heart shook. They are actually planning to assassinate my grandfather. As for the assassin organization, the Blood Sword Hall, the three leaders were all at the Sky Xian realm. And they even have the Supreme Shen Xian as their leader. However, due to the fact that he was in the water, the originally tranquil surface of the lake couldn't help but let out a slight splashing sound. Although the sound was so soft that it could not be heard, Jun Moxie immediately felt that something was wrong. Who? He only heard a stern voice, "There is someone under the boat. His tracks have been exposed." Jun Moxie did not have much time to think. His body turned around, and his feet fiercely stomped on the bottom of the boat. His whole body suddenly shot out from the bottom of the water like a huge swordfish, and rapidly swam into the distance. With a loud bang, the top floor of the pleasure boat was torn apart. A figure with a golden body mixed with a faint yellow light soared into the sky, and flew 50 feet high. His eyes were like thunder and lightning as he swept around, and found the figure of Jun Moxie, who was rapidly moving away from the bottom of the water. A golden light flashed, and he landed back on the boat. Then, he grabbed the boat's long bamboo pole, and with a shwa sound, it flew out of his hand like a black lightning, and shot towards Jun Mocie's figure under the water. At the same time, his body flew high into the air, and followed the direction of the bamboo pole. His clothes fluttered in the curtain of the night, and his body flickered with a golden light, as if a deity had descended to earth. It was Lord Lu. The peak of the gold level. Just half a step more, and he would be at the Earth Xian level. Jun Moxie swam away like a flash of lightning, and suddenly felt a heavy pressure on his head. The water around his body seemed to have suddenly solidified, and at the same time, he felt a huge sense of danger enveloping him. In a split second, his hair stood on end. Without even turning his head, Jun Moxie could clearly feel that this danger was aimed at his back. If he couldn't avoid it, there would definitely be a big bloody hole in it. At that time, he would probably have to go through another transmigration, if he still had that kind of luck. In a flash, he mobilized all the power in his body, and the art of unlocking heaven's fortune was fully activated. Suddenly, he felt the pressure on his body decrease, and his body leaned to one side. His chest stuck out, and his buttocks protruded. His waist suddenly bent, and his whole body became disjointed, and became a standard's shape. What a devilish figure, with the curves of the front and the back. Shwa! The bamboo pole, which was more than 4 feet long, almost brushed past Jun Moxie's skin. It pierced through his clothes, and even his underwear, and stuck deep into the mud. Jun Moxie only felt a chill on his thigh, and a sharp pain, and a few curly hairs suddenly floated into the water. If the bamboo pole had deviated by half an inch, perhaps Jun Dashao would have had to serve His Majesty the Emperor. Suddenly, his scalp went numb. An ordinary bamboo pole was only 2 feet long, but the Spirit Fog Lake was deep, and the bamboo pole was relatively long. Jun Moxie struggled, but the bamboo pole was stuck between his clothes and his skin, and unexpectedly did not move. With a flip of his right hand, a small flying dagger appeared in his hand, and with a chi sound, he was freed. The 2 pieces of his robe were like 2 butterflies, and in the middle was a white body. If it was a woman, it would be very attractive. In the sky, the figure emitting a golden light was swiftly and violently swooping down. Before he reached the surface of the water rippled, and the calm surface of the water sank deep, forming a whirlpool. even the bamboo pole that was stuck deep in the mud was exposed. Jun Moxie was at the bottom of the water, and his eyes were wide open as he looked at the figure swooping down from the sky. He snorted in his heart, and suddenly straightened his body, and fiercely rushed up. "Ah, don't worry, I am not rushing up to fight with this Gold Xian Peak expert, who is still an insurmountable mountain to me." His body rose like an arrow, and in the instant that he was about to break the surface of the water, he suddenly pushed with his left hand, and a water arrow shot out, shooting towards the figure in the sky. His other hand grabbed the bamboo pole, and his body dropped 1,000 caddies. At the same time, he rapidly swam in the opposite direction, and activated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. With a "wang" sound, the bamboo pole, which was as thick as a calf, was unexpectedly pulled into the shape of a bow, and issued a "ka-ka" sound, which made one's teeth ache. When the pole was bent to the extreme, Jun Moxie's accumulated strength was exhausted, and he suddenly let go, and his naked body swam away at an extreme speed. Chapter 103. Jun Moxie had already figured out that this person threw the bamboo pole. Firstly, it was to kill him, but there was also another intention. That was, in case the throw failed to kill him, he could use it as a foothold. This could be seen from his falling posture. Although he was falling fiercely, he was falling with both feet. If it was an ordinary expert in this situation, they would usually fall head down and feet up. That way, their speed would be twice as fast as this person's current speed. This also meant that this Lord Lu, this high and mighty peak gold level expert, did not know how to swim. This was what Jun Moxie had analyzed in that instant. Therefore, he immediately chose to pull the bamboo pole to the side. As long as he pulled the bamboo pole away, he would have nowhere to borrow strength after falling down. Then, even if he drowned, he would not be able to catch up to him. But Jun Moxie did not expect that not only was the bamboo pole very tough, the mud at the bottom of the lake was also deep enough. He could not pull it out and could not break. Seeing that the person was about to fall, he could only let go and swim away naked. His naked body was like a big white fish with a bit of jet black water grass in its mouth, that Lord Lu had already planned it out. This eavesdropper only knew how to escape, so he was definitely not a powerful character. He could deal with him. Although he did not know how to swim, with the bamboo pole as a foothold, he could attack or defend. If it really did not work, he could just turn around and return to the boat. Therefore, he did not have any scruples. The moment the bamboo pole left his hand, a water arrow shot towards him. Lord Lu waved his sleeves and immediately swept it to the side. This way, he could easily test the opponent's strength and felt more at ease. But who knew that when he neared the surface of the water, he swept his eyes around and found that the bamboo pole head that was just flashing in front of him had actually disappeared. This caused him to panic. His body was in the air, and his strength had already been exhausted. Like a moth flying into a flame, he fell into the water with a splashing sound. Just as he fell into the water, before he could regain his senses, he saw two big white buttocks not far in front of him slipping into the depths of the water. He could not help but be furious. Right at this moment, he suddenly felt a change in the flow of water in front of him. With a buzzing sound, a long bamboo pole rapidly bounced back along with the turbulent flow of water. If he knew how to swim, he would naturally be able to dodge in time. However, he didn't know how to swim. He was flustered when he fell into the deep water. How could he care about these things? With a "pa" sound, the bamboo pole hit him hard between his legs. Before he could let out a heart-wrenching scream, his body instinctively bent over. Then, the head of the bamboo pole hit his forehead with a bang. With a blood-curdling screech, Lord Lu was smashed into a somersault. Under the tremendous force, he flew out of the water with a splendid splash of blood. Like a dried salted fish, he flew straight towards the direction of the pleasure boat. The last remnant image in his mind was actually that pair of big white buttocks swaying in front of him, really very white. From the pleasure boat, another slender figure flew out nimbly. Unexpectedly, it was a brilliant silver light. Lady Yu's body flashed and caught Lord Lu's body in her hands. Then, she flew back into the boat. It turned out that there was a rope tied around her waist. Lady Yu returned to the boat and looked into the distance with a complicated expression. The person who was eavesdropping had already disappeared without a trace. In front of her was a dense patch of reeds. In this pitch-black night, after this delay, even if she wanted to chase after him, she would not be able to catch up. The previously awe-inspiring Lord Lu was now lying at his feet, unconscious and on the verge of death. On the other side of the hidden reeds, June Moxie climbed ashore with lingering fear. Taking advantage of the darkness, he ran away naked. In his heart, he rejoiced. If not for this injury and the advancement of the art of unlocking heaven's fortune, I'm afraid I really would have died this time. That was really close. With a bang, he knocked down a satisfied customer who had just come out of the brothel. His legs were weak as he walked down the road. June Moxie nimbly tore off the man's clothes and hastily put them on. Then, he disappeared like a wisp of smoke. On the ground, a fat, naked body was lying on his back. A small earthworm-like thing was tilting its head to one side. It was extremely ugly. The June family's 8 bodyguards frantically searched for their young master. They were well aware of the seriousness of this matter. If Grandpa June were to find out about this, the 8 of them would not be able to escape the crime of failing to protect the young master. If something were to happen to this young master, they did not dare to think about it anymore. Only when night fell did the 8 of them return. Just as they reached the main gate, they saw a person who looked like their young master hurriedly walking towards them from the other side. Why did they say that he looked like their young master? Because that person was wearing an extremely ill-fitting robe. His appearance was a complete mess. Although Jun Dashao was a complete debauchee, his appearance was not bad. Therefore, he paid great attention to his appearance and would definitely not be as sloppy as the person in front of him. Perhaps it was because the person looked similar. However, the 8 bodyguards looked carefully and simultaneously cried out in surprise, unable to contain their joy. This person looks like our young master, but he shouldn't be our young master. Isn't this young master June? Who else could it be? What's wrong with the 8 of you? In the afternoon, you were actually scared silly by that girl Raimu's shitty bodyguards. I called out to you several times but you didn't respond. Jun Dashao shook his head as he hurried on with his journey. He had a look of exasperation on his face as he said, isn't he just a primary Tian Xian expert? How could he scare you to such an extent? Looking at you in a daze made me angry. So, I simply left first. The 8 bodyguards suddenly recalled that they had indeed been absent-minded for a moment after Yi Guhan's angry roar. Could it be that at that moment, the young master had called out to us but we didn't respond? Then, he had angrily left on his own. They looked at June Moxie dumbfoundedly, and their minds were in chaos at the same time. They hadn't even thought to ask him, since you left alone, why did you return at the same time as us? We have been looking for you everywhere in Tianxiang City for a long time. Where have you been for such a long time? Also, what's the matter with that fat and vulgar robe that only a nouveau riche would wear? Also, why does your hair seem to be wet? Don't just stand there, hurry up and give me the blazing heart meridian. June Moxie's foot had already hurriedly stepped through the door, and he commanded without turning his head. The bodyguards woke up as if from a dream. They mechanically moved their feet, and followed the mysterious young master inside. Almost everyone was wondering how the young master's legs were so fast today. Was he possessed by a ghost? Jun Dashao's robe was still empty, and it was extremely cold and uncomfortable. He had to quickly change his clothes, in case others found out that he had actually been swimming naked, running naked, and then stripping another man. Once he returned with his clothes, Jun Mo's illustrious reputation would be lost in the spirit fog lake. The Jun residence's door was tightly closed behind everyone. It was already late at night, and the bright moon was in the sky. Jun Wui was still sitting in his wheelchair, quietly waiting for his nephew's return. The soft moonlight in the sky sprinkled on his resolute face, and his eyes were calm and profound. Hope, extravagant hope, or perhaps, despair. The courtyard door opened, and Jun Moxie, who had changed into his own robes, walked in with a smile on his face. Jun Wui slowly turned his wheelchair, and very calmly looked at Jun Moxie. He looked up and down, and found that there was no problem, and was relieved. I heard that you were in the limelight this afternoon at the magnificent jewel hall? Yes. Jun Moxie bluntly said, the magnificent jewel hall is too arrogant. Suddenly, he felt that something was wrong. When the third uncle mentioned the magnificent jewel hall, why did he pause in the middle? His tone was also not right. Jun Wui lowered his eyes, and was silent for a long time before he slowly said, do you know, when I heard the news, I broke out in a cold sweat. Your grandfather looked fine on the surface, but I know that he was afraid. Yeah, uncle knows that you are quite courageous, but, unless it is necessary, unless it is a matter of life and death, do not have any conflict with the magnificent jewel hall. The magnificent jewel hall, our Jun family cannot afford to provoke them, at least for the time being. Do you understand? This sentence was said very slowly, almost one word at a time. It was really hard to imagine that such soft words could actually come out from the mouth of such a strong man. Jun Moxie was also startled, and slowly sat down in front of him and said, Third uncle, this is not something you should say. Is the magnificent jewel hall really so terrible? Even you are afraid of them. Jun Wui turned his head away, and did not let him see the look in his eyes, and coldly said, if it was only me, I would naturally be able to provoke the magnificent jewel hall. Even if it is 100 times more powerful than the magnificent jewel hall, so what? Life only has one life, grass only has one spring, the worst that can happen is death. And you're the same, Moxie. I know that you're courageous and insightful, and you're not afraid of the heavens or the earth. This is something that I'm very pleased with. But, I feel that you don't have a strong sense of immersion in your family. So, I hope that you can promise me. No matter what happens, you must remember that you are the son of an aristocratic family. Behind you, there is also a huge family with deep roots, the Jun family. The family, in the vast majority of the time, will be your greatest help, but sometimes it will also be your greatest hindrance. Jun Wui raised his head, his eyes were bright, but seemed to contain a lot of unexplainable things. As long as there is hope for the family, we must not give up. This is the glory of an aristocratic family, and also the sorrow of an aristocratic family, but also the responsibility. Jun Moxie was silent for a long time, and then he smiled and said, I understand. It's good that you understand. Jun Wui gently smiled, because of this matter, I have been waiting for you all night. Now that you understand, accompany me for a drink. Drink? For the time being, I am afraid that uncle will not be able to drink for the next 10 days to half a month. Because I want to congratulate third uncle, the 5 kinds of medicinal herbs have now been prepared. Jun Moxie smiled, and the pulse diagnosis golden needle, as early as half a month ago, has also been prepared. Third uncle, in another 10 days, this thing you are sitting on can be dismantled to make a fire, and on the day of the fire, you can also cancel your taboo. Chapter 104. Jun Wui's hand trembled and the wine in his cup spilled out. He silently looked at the wheelchair handle in his right hand and stared at it for a long time. He could only feel his heart tumbling like a stormy sea. 10 years of disability. Today, a glimmer of hope had finally arrived. Jun Wui remained silent until he left, not uttering a single word. 3 days later, Jun Zhantian directly sealed the door. He passed down an order, from today onwards, no one is to be seen except by His Majesty's decree. If anyone dares to take a step into the inner courtyard, they will be killed without question. The atmosphere of the entire June family suddenly became as if they were facing a formidable enemy. It was so tense that it was hard to breathe. The door to the inner courtyard was tightly shut. Outside the door, 2 rows of bodyguards stood with their swords unsheathed, reflecting the blazing sun in the sky, shining brightly. Shadows flickered in the shadows. The power of the June family that once shook the capital was once again displayed at this moment. Moreover, this time, all the core forces that had followed June Zhantian for decades were mobilized. Each and every one of them was absolutely trustworthy and loyal. Even those who had the slightest suspicion would be excluded from this operation. This time, Du Ju's treatment must be handled by all possible and impossible external threats, not even the slightest bit slack. A huge iron basin was placed in the middle of the inner courtyard's 4-zhang high wall. The volume of this iron basin could be said to be a small reservoir. It had long been filled with water and had been set up. A raging fire was burning beneath it. 6 burly men were constantly adding firewood, causing the water surface to bubble slightly. June Zhantian was dressed in a green robe with a solemn expression on his face. He wore a pair of strange gloves on his hands, which completely covered his hands and arms. Not even the slightest bit of his skin was exposed. He paced back and forth in the courtyard, appearing extremely restless. On the other hand, the white-robed Jun Wui was calm, as if he had broken away from the shackles of his soul overnight. Jun Moxie was at the side. There was a big jade plate on a table. His 2 hands quickly placed the 9-leaf grass, macaroni, and continuous severing root on the jade plate in a certain order. Then, he pounded out the juice and let it flow down the slope into a wide-mouthed jade bottle. His movements were abnormally fast, but the order was orderly. Finally, Jun Moxie shouted, "Third uncle." Jun Wui's entire body shook, and the bright yellow xian qi of the earth rank shook fiercely. The robe covering his body instantly swelled and exploded into pieces. Jun Zhantian picked up his body and spread it out. Jun Moxie shouted in a low voice. In a flash, he smeared the residue of the medicine evenly on every part of Jun Wui's body. He did not let go of even the slightest bit of privacy. The 5 kinds of herbs in Jun Moxie's prescription were all highly toxic. Any one of them was a poison that would kill the moment it touched blood. Although there were only 3 of them mixed together, the moment the dregs were smeared on Jun Wui's body, Jun Wui felt as if he was suddenly thrown into a raging fire. He felt a searing pain from head to toe. He let out a muffled groan and clenched his teeth. Cold sweat broke out on his forehead. The pain of 3 great poisons on his body at the same time was unimaginable. But this pain was only the beginning. After smearing the dregs, Jun Moxie did not pause for a moment. He picked up the jade bottle of medicine and skillfully pinched Jun Wui's chin with his left hand. Jun Wui's tightly clenched teeth suddenly opened. He could not help but let out a muffled roar. Jun Moxie had already poured the contents of the jade bottle down his throat. Jun Wui didn't have enough time to react, and the bottle of liquid had already flowed down his throat. This liquid was very fierce, and it felt as if a ball of fire was burning down his throat. Jun Wui couldn't help but let out a muffled groan, and couldn't help but shout a few times to vent the pain in his body. Jun Mo Xia had just opened his mouth when Jun Mo Xia grabbed a white cloth that he had prepared earlier, and stuffed it into his mouth. Jun Zhantian trembled. Jun Moxie's smooth and skillful movements were no different from those ruthless officials who were used to using torture. In fact, he was even better. Jun Zhantian could not bear to watch anymore. How could he watch his grandson torment his son? This is a necessary measure. Under extreme pain, even the most persevering person will show signs of blurring consciousness. If the mouth is not stuffed, it is very likely that the person will bite off his tongue under the intense pain. Jun Moxie picked up the intestine-cracking flour beside him and smashed it into pieces. He actually managed to take a break from the busy situation and gave an explanation. Suddenly, the 3 great poisons simultaneously flared up in Jun Wui's body. Jun Wui's naked skin turned purplish-black in an instant. At the moment when the color changed, the intestine-cracking flower's dregs had already scattered on his body. Jun Moxie's movements were extremely fast. He pulled the white cloth out of Jun Wui's mouth. The next moment, the intestine-cracking flower's venom had already entered his throat. Jun Wui didn't even have time to react before the white cloth was stuffed back into his mouth again, this time tightly gagged. Jun Wui only had time to let out a muffled groan. His eyes were almost protruding out of their sockets. Both his eyeballs were bloodshot. It was as if blood had penetrated his pupils. The intestine-splitting flower's toxicity had flared up at the same time as the other three poisons, and was rapidly spreading from the inside to the outside. Jun Wui felt a burning pain in his dantian, followed by an excruciating pain that seemed to be burning his soul from 10 years ago in his dantian. At this moment, the 5 poisons in Jun Wui's body, 1 old and 4 new, started to circulate at the same time. They attacked and resisted each other. His naked skin turned colorful in the blink of an eye. His waist and legs, which had not felt anything for 10 years, felt as if their bones were being sawed by a blunt knife. Finally, the hidden poison that had been hidden for 10 years was forced out. Jun Moxie breathed a sigh of relief. His eyes were fixed on the thing between Jun Wui's legs. At this critical moment, Jun Moxie's mind unexpectedly came up with a strange thought: it doesn't seem to be as big as mine. Just as he was thinking about this, Jun Zhantian suddenly shouted excitedly, "Get up! Get up, ah!" His white beard trembled as he pointed at his son's crotch. Sure enough, that thing was shaking its head. Suddenly, it flapped its head and shot up to the sky. It almost hit the nose of Jun Zhantian, who was bending over to check. Jun Zhantian's thing had not been used for more than 10 years. Today, it suddenly rose up. Naturally, it was extraordinary. Jun Moxie, who was holding the blazing heart meridian in his hand, was startled by Jun Zhantian's shout. He almost fell to the ground. He rolled his eyes and reprimanded, "It must get up. If it can't get up, doesn't it mean that the treatment has failed? Really? Is it worth making such a fuss about?" Grandpa Jun hiccuped again and again. He didn't care that his grandson was actually reprimanding him. Instead, his face was full of joy. This thing had recovered. It meant that his son, who had been disabled for 10 years, had regained the basic functions of a man. Not to mention anything else, at least he could reproduce for the Jun family. For Grandpa Jun, who had always been brooding over his only son, Jun Moxie, this was simply a great blessing. Jun Wui's lips trembled. The muscles on his face twitched in pain. At this moment, a feeling of extreme shame welled up in him. Jun Zhantian was once a famous iron-blooded man, a warrior who had been through hundreds of battles. But now, his remaining consciousness looked at the 2 people, 1 old and 1 young. They were actually staring at his uncontrollable treasure. Under the pain and shame, he simply let out a muffled groan and directly fainted. Out of sight, out of mind. 2 grown men, 1 old and 1 young, staring at the treasure under the crotch of a strong man. That old man, he simply wanted to reach out and fiddle with it. How could he let people live? This was not something that a normal man could tolerate. Although he was his grandfather, Jun Zhantian was still in his 30s, wasn't he? In a flash, they were all inserted into Jun Wui's broad back. With a sigh of relief, Jun Wui pulled out the bamboo raft with a schwa sound and threw it out. Jun Wui's body directly tumbled into the boiling water. As the temperature of the water slowly rose, the sound of boiling water could be heard from the surface of the cauldron. As the water boiled, the pores of Jun Wui's body and the 7 orifices of his head continuously exuded a jet-black liquid. In just a moment, the large cauldron of water had been dyed as black as ink. Chapter 105. Jun Zhantian's eyebrows twitched wildly, his eyes wide open. This method of curing poison was something he had never seen or heard of before. However, the fact that Jun Zhantian did not die after being pierced by needles was enough to prove that this method of treatment was effective. However, looking at his own body of old ribs and then at the boiling water in the pot, Jun Zhantian could not help but shiver. If I were to go in, even with Tian Xian's protective Xian Qi, I reckon that I would not be able to hold out for long. I might even be cooked in a short while. The few burly men adding firewood were also sweating profusely. Not only because of the heat, but also because of the fear. This is too crazy, to actually put a living person into a pot of boiling water and cook him like this? What if the person is cooked to death? With this temperature, it would be difficult not to cook him, right? Jun Moxie was still standing firmly on the edge of the pot, his eyes unblinking as he watched Jun Wui's body tumbling in the water, closely watching every change. His face was calm, expressionless, almost cold. Suddenly, Jun Moxie did not hesitate to put his left hand into the boiling water and scooped up Jun Wui's entire body. His hand was covered in a layer of blisters. Half of it was scalded by boiling water, while the other half was corroded by the poison. However, Jun Wui's body was the complete opposite. In fact, his skin was now fair. In fact, that terrifying and strange color had already faded from his skin. With a swoosh, he flew down and landed beside Jun Zhantian. Just as Jun Zhantian caught him, Jun Moxie pressed his right hand on Jun Wui's dantian and activated the art of unlocking heaven's fortune. After a long time, Jun Moxie's face became paler and paler, while Jun Wui's face became rosier and rosier. Finally, the golden needles in Jun Wui's body were forced out bit by bit. They shook and trembled. Finally, with a "pu" sound, a silver needle flew out along with a stream of black blood, then, the next one. Finally, the silver needle on the Baihui acupoint flew out with a "chi" sound, bringing with it a thin stream of blood. It was actually six-colored. Jun Moxie grunted and slowly retracted his palm. He sat cross-legged and slowly adjusted his breathing. His face was as pale as a sheet of paper. Before he withdrew his palm, Jun Wui suddenly opened his eyes, and two sharp rays of light shot out from his eyes. Light blue. It was light blue. What does this mean? All the poison had been removed. The seal was broken. Jun Wui's 10 years of accumulated Xian Qi burst out, coupled with the huge effect of the blazing heart meridian. In this short moment, his Xian Qi was directly promoted from the middle level of the Earth Profound Realm to the initial level of the Tian Xian. In the blink of an eye, he had risen by 3 levels. Not only that, but under the effect of the blazing heart meridian, Jun Wui was immune to all poisons. A super strong expert was born. Seeing this light blue light, Jun Zhantian suddenly jumped up high, his mouth opened wide, and his eyes bulged as if he had seen a ghost. His right hand unconsciously exerted force, and with a cry of pain, he actually pulled out a lock of his beard. He had practiced hard for most of his life, and now he was only at the middle level of the Tian Xian. Although his disabled son was once known as a martial arts genius, but for him to be able to rush to the middle level of the Earth Profound Realm at his age was already quite commendable. Not to mention, he was seriously injured and spent 10 years in a wheelchair. Just like that, the moment the seal was opened, he directly rose to the Sky Xian realm like a rocket. This world is really crazy. Jun Zhantian shook his head, his heart feeling very confused. 3 parts of joy, 3 parts of relief, 3 parts of excitement, and half of fear. The last part was that he suspected that he was in a dream. On one hand, he was so happy that he wanted to sing and dance, on the other hand, he was so shocked that he was speechless. For a moment, his heart was filled with mixed feelings, and he was actually unable to speak. Even if he was really in a dream, he wished that he would wake up from this beautiful dream a moment later. Jun Wui clearly felt that his legs, which he had not felt for 10 years, had a strange feeling of numbness and itchiness. At the same time, he also felt the smooth flow of Xian Qi through his meridians, and his heart was suddenly moved. I can finally stand up again. My old enemy, Jun Wui, will look for you in the near future. I will look for you to collect the debt you owe me. His body moved, and he wanted to stand up and experience what it felt like to walk on two legs again. Third uncle, you still need to sit down for the time being. Don't move, please be patient for a while. Jun Moxie's tired voice came from behind him. At this time, you still need to calm your mind and circulate your Xian Qi. Firstly, the Blazing Heart Meridian's medicinal strength is enormous, and the toxins have already been expelled from the body due to resisting the previous 5 poisons. However, the internal benefits have all remained in third uncle's body. If you do not resolve it as soon as possible and use it for your own use, it will not be good. Secondly, third uncle's lower body has not moved for 10 years, and his blood vessels are blocked. He still needs to circulate it 360 times before his blood vessels can flow smoothly as he wishes. Only then can he be safe. Jun Moxie closed his eyes and slowly said. This kind of moment of ecstasy was a big obstacle on a person's path of cultivation. If one were to seize the time to meditate and consolidate his mind in this situation, it would be of great benefit to his future cultivation and spiritual realm. It must be known that the 500-year-old Blazing Heart Meridian's medicinal strength was enormous. With its own strength, it could fight poison with poison against the old and 4 new poisons in Jun Wui's body. The toxicity of the Blazing Heart Meridian could be imagined. However, in addition to its toxicity, the Blazing Heart Meridian's medicinal strength was also extremely outstanding. Its effect was in no way inferior to the poison. In Jun Moxie's medical case, the original plan was to fight poison with poison and use the Blazing Heart Meridian's poison to forcefully resist the other 5 poisons. Then, with the help of boiling water and silver needles, he would expel the poison in one fell swoop. There were no accidents and it was quite smooth. Next, he should have used the Blazing Heart Meridian's powerful medicinal strength to nourish his body. However, it would take half a month before he could fully recover. After all, Jun Wui's body had been crippled for a long time. With such a huge nourishment, it was inevitable that he would not be able to withstand it, so he had to slowly recuperate. But a few days ago, Jun Dashao discovered that his own mysterious art of unlocking heaven's fortune, in addition to recuperating himself, could also be used to help others. Moreover, the effect was great. Looking at the memories of his 2 lives, there was no cultivation method that could be compared to it. Moreover, it had a wonderful effect. It was not afraid of all poisons in the world. It really lived up to its name of good fortune. Jun Dashao thought about it and changed his original plan. After dispelling the poison, he would directly use his own strength to nourish Jun Sanye's body. Not only was this method effective, it was even more remarkable. In just a short period of time, Jun Sanye had been reborn. The huge benefits of the Blazing Heart Meridian had nowhere to vent, so it was converted into Xian Qi and integrated into Jun Sanye's body. Jun Sanye had been in seclusion for 10 years, and the results were not mediocre. The 2 Xian Qi and true essences were instantly fused into one, and this Xian Qi and true essences were equivalent to an ordinary person's cultivation for at least 50 years. This explained why Jun Wui had been disabled for 10 years. Although he had painstakingly cultivated Xian Qi for 10 years, it was impossible for him to recover and become a Tian Xian expert. All of this was due to Jun Moxie's good fortune, mysterious art, which allowed everything to flow smoothly. Jun Wui's body paused for a moment, but he did not dare to neglect. He sat down and tried his best to control the myriad of emotions in his heart. He tried to calm himself down and immerse himself in cultivation as soon as possible. Even so, it took him 10 times more time than usual to finally stabilize his mind. The Xian Qi finally began to flow according to the normal route, and he slowly entered into a state where he forgot about himself and everything else. June Moxie had only meditated for a moment, but the art of unlocking heaven's fortune that he had consumed was quickly replenished by the Hongjun Pagoda. Slowly getting up, he came face to face with Jun Zhantian's excited eyes. Mo Xie. Jun Zhantian looked at his grandson in a daze for a moment. Suddenly, tears streamed down his face. He was unable to say a single word. Despite his age, the white-haired Grandpa Jun was crying bitterly like a child. For so many years, the famed general who had caused enemy monarchs and generals to flee upon hearing his name had actually lost his composure like this? Jun Moxie's heart ached, and he lowered his head in dejection. For so many years, who could understand the bitterness in this old man's heart? What kind of pain and suffering had he endured? Originally, he had a house full of children and grandchildren, a happy and harmonious life. His position was high, and he was above tens of thousands of people. Suddenly, 2 of his sons died on the battlefield, and the only remaining son was crippled for life. How unbearable was this for a father? Losing his father in his youth, his wife in his middle age, and his son in his old age. Jun Zhantian, who was an extremely high official, had all 3 of them. But the heavens still felt that the blow was not heavy enough. The 2 grandsons he had painstakingly nurtured, where all his hopes rested, had gone to the battlefield on the eve of their wedding. They never returned, and not even their bones were left. When the news arrived, Jun Zhantian was ordering people to decorate the bridal chamber. He was waiting for his grandson to come back and get married. He was waiting to hold his great-grandson, and his heart was filled with joy and longing. When the news arrived, Jun Zhantian's hair and beard turned white overnight. The joyful laughter of the past, and the scene of a family sitting around a table, enjoying the bliss of a family reunion, was still before his eyes. But it was gone forever. In such a large family, other than himself, there was only a crippled son and a disappointing debauchee grandson. Desolation filled his eyes. Thus, Jun Zhantian became depressed. He was in despair, and there was no hope. But amidst this hopelessness, his once incomparably disappointed grandson, Jun Moxie, appeared out of thin air. His previous debauchee appearance had been washed away, and he had become lofty and unyielding. Moreover, he had a deep and astute mind, and his thoughts were nimble. There was a faint air of astuteness and foresight. This had already greatly comforted Grandpa Jun's heart, and he felt extremely excited. Unexpectedly, an even bigger surprise had yet to come. His own son's disability, which had once rendered all the world's doctors helpless, had actually been cured by his grandson. The heavens have mercy. Jun Zhantian finally burst into tears, tears of joy. Decades of depression and worry had been swept away. The heavens have mercy, and my Jun family can also have today, hope, and a future. Not only does the Jun family have a successor, but the student has also surpassed the master. Even if this old man closes his eyes now, he can still smile in the underworld without any regrets. Even the ancestors of the Jun family in the underworld can calmly smile. Grandpa Jun was so excited that he could no longer speak, but his body was trembling, after a long time. With a swoosh, he disappeared, leaving the grandfather and grandson holding their stomachs and laughing heartily without a care for their image. After a while, Jun Wui, dressed in a green robe, whizzed over. He rubbed his palms and said, "Kid, don't run if you have the guts." Jun Moxie was shocked and screamed, "Help, I don't know how to fight." He turned around and ran. But how could his current speed compare to Jun Wui, who had just advanced to the Tianxian realm? His buttocks were being hit by Jun Wui accurately. Jun Moxie laughed as he ran and begged for mercy. Jun Wui completely ignored him and continued to beat him. Jun Moxie had no choice but to run behind Grandpa Jun. He grabbed his sleeves and dodged left and right. Jun Wui snorted angrily and chased after him. Even though Grandpa Jun had the mental fortitude of a Sky Xian level expert, he was still dizzy from being spun around by these two people. However, he was still able to laugh heartily. This kind of familial happiness had not appeared in this family for a very, very long time. Seeing that the 6 burly men were about to lift the big iron pot and pour it away, Jun Moxie could not care less about being beaten. He hurriedly shouted, "Stop! This is a good thing, it can't be poured away." When he said that, Jun Wui and Jun Zhantian were surprised. Jun Wui had beaten his nephew until the whole family was beaming with joy. The embarrassment had long disappeared and they stood at the side with a smile. This is such a useful thing, how can it be poured away so casually? It is very useful. Jun Moxie drove the burly men away from the iron pot and turned around. He picked up a leather bag from the side and poured a lot of things into the big iron pot. It was as if a ladle of cold water had been poured into boiling oil. Crackling sounds could be heard. After Jun Moxie finished pouring, he quickly retreated. When the black water from the pot fell onto the ground, it immediately turned black. Jun Wui and Grandpa Jun were dumbfounded. This kind of poison is too vicious. What did you pour into the pot? Why is it so overbearing? Grandpa Jun was not ashamed to ask. Grandpa Jun could see that there was something strange about this grandson of his. He could not use common sense to speculate on him. It is actually snake venom, just that there are slightly more types, Jun Moxie said with a smile. There are a total of 13 types of snake venom here. As he said that, Jun Moxie pointed at the big iron pot. Grandfather, third uncle, look. Third uncle's bath water is a combination of 6 types of poison. However, due to the mutual enhancement and restraint between them, they are able to coexist peacefully. But after the addition of the snake venom, this big pot of water becomes the most poisonous thing in the world. We only need to mix them evenly, dilute them with water and place them in a wooden bucket. Then, we insert the weapons of our family warriors into the water and soak it for a period of time. That will immediately turn it into a poisonous weapon. When the war is over, he. Too vicious. Too vicious. Too despicable. Too shameless. If such a weapon were to stab into the body of an enemy, there is no need to stab a vital point. Just a little scratch on the hands or feet would be enough to be fatal. Such a poisonous thing, even with Grandpa Jun's cultivation, Tian Xian, he might not be able to withstand it for long. Truly terrifying. It was exceptionally frightening. Jun Zhantian and Jun Wui stretched their necks further and further as their eyes widened. At this moment, they looked at Jun Moxie as if they were looking at a demon that had escaped from hell. Both of them shuddered at the same time. Compared to the harmonious and joyous atmosphere of the Jun family, the Grand Preceptor's mansion was in a gloomy and miserable state. Although Li Zhen and Meng Haizhou were driven out of the magnificent Jewel Hall on the spot and the Li family was deprived of the right to enter the magnificent Jewel Hall, but as long as the Meng family's box was still there was no problem at all. Moreover, the most important thing was that the jade coral that had been successfully traded was finally brought back to the magnificent Jewel Hall in one piece. Just based on this point alone, it was a great achievement and at least the merits outweighed the demerits. After Li Yuran saw the jade coral, she listened to Li Zhen's frightening report with a smile on her face. Li Zhen anxiously thought that Li Yuran would fly into a rage and punish him, but he did not expect that Li Yuran would lightly say, "Oh? 5 million taels. Not expensive at all." No matter how you look at it, the Tang family also participated in the competition. For you to be able to buy the jade coral is already very good. Little brother Zhen, later you can go to Manager Li in the accounts room and collect the 3 million taels that you paid in advance. Regarding the Li family's right to enter the magnificent Jewel Hall, such a great shame and humiliation, Li Yuran did not even mention it. It was really puzzling. This sentence made Li Zhen and Meng Haizhou almost unable to believe their ears. They almost thought that the person standing in front of them was not Li Yuran, but rather someone else. Since when did young Master Yuran become so easy to talk to? The two of them stared blankly for a long time, as if they had just awoken from a dream. Although they were puzzled, at the moment everything was fine. They could not help but let out a big sigh of relief and thanked her profusely. Li Yuran sat quietly and smiled as she looked at the sparkling and translucent jade coral in front of her. After a long time, she let out a sigh and said to herself, I was really careless. I did not take into account that old Master Tang also needed this thing. If I had missed this opportunity, it would have been my fault. However, with such a price, if it was not for these two debauches, I am afraid that if it was someone else, they would have given up in fear. This is perhaps the only advantage of being a debauchee. As the saying goes, a ruler is short, an inch is short. A person should make the best use of everything. This is probably what it means. Speaking up to here, she chuckled twice. Her palms stealthily circulated her xian qi and her whole body flashed with a golden light. She then withdrew her hands and said with a happy face, the rumors are indeed true. This thing contains a very large amount of heaven and earth energy. If grandfather absorbs this energy, even if he cannot practice xian qi again, it would be more than enough to prolong his life. She gracefully stood up and picked up the jade coral before walking towards the Grand Preceptor Li Shang's study room. In the study room, Grand Preceptor Li narrowed his eyes as he looked at the jade coral in front of him. His face revealed a happy smile. Firstly, it was for the sake of his own health. Secondly, it was for the sake of his grandson's filial piety. Grand Preceptor Li suddenly felt that with a grandson like this, what more could he ask for? Grandfather, this matter should not be delayed. If others were to find out about it, it might be a long night and many dreams. Why don't we use the method that my master once told us? I will activate the energy and grandfather will absorb this good thing as soon as possible. Li Yuran smiled warmly and elegantly. Li Shang chuckled and said thoughtfully, that's good too. Go and call them out. They will protect us grandfather and grandson. Li Yuran hummed and clapped her hands twice. In an instant, there was a rustling sound from outside. A person said respectfully, Master, young master, we have already tightly controlled the area of 30 feet around the study room. Do we need to increase it? Li Yuran said gently, enough. The person outside responded and did not make another sound. Li Shang looked at his grandson with a gratified expression and asked, have your martial brothers returned? Li Yuran said, yes, they have already returned to the mountain. Their journey was safe and there were no accidents. I will definitely pass on grandfather's concern. Li Shang coughed twice and said with a smile, we are grandfather and grandson. Why are we talking about this? It's a pity that your master cannot come down personally. If he could come, our Li family would have the greatest guarantee. Sigh. He let out a long sigh. Master is preparing for the appointment at Heaven's Equal Peak in 3 years. I am afraid that he cannot be distracted for the time being. But with the help of my martial brothers, I believe that it will be more than enough to deal with these matters in Tianxiang Kingdom. As long as it is not an army expedition, we do not have to worry about anything. Li Shang nodded noncommittally. He let out a deep breath and said excitedly, since this matter should not be delayed, let us begin now. Chapter 107. Yes. Li Yuran replied and gently placed the jade coral on the table in front of Li Shang. Then, she firmly pressed one side of the jade coral, closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Her whole body shone with a golden light, it was obvious that she was operating the xian qi with all her might. The jade coral made a clanging sound. It was originally sparkling and translucent like jade, but now there was a faint light seemingly leaping out from the jade coral. Strands of blue qi, almost imperceptible to the naked eye, slowly rose from the surface. The moment the blue qi rose, the entire body of the jade coral turned into a strange blue color. The time has come. Li Shang's eyes flashed with a trace of desire. He calmed his mind and slowly stretched out his skinny right palm, gently caressing the other side of the jade coral. The moment his palm touched the jade coral, the minute qi that was stirred up by Li Yuran, at a speed visible to the naked eye, scrambled along Li Shang's arm and slowly penetrated into his body, bit by bit. As the blue qi entered his body, Grand Preceptor Li Shang's originally emotionless face could not help but reveal a trace of heartfelt joy. He could clearly feel that his meridians were feeling much better at this moment. As the blue qi continued to enter, Li Shang felt his body becoming more and more relaxed, and even his soul was trembling with joy. His dantian, the place where Jun Zhan Tian punched it, had long since lost all feeling. Now, there was a faint pain, which was then gently soothed by the blue qi. His dantian and meridians, which had been damaged for many years, were also recovering at an extremely slow speed. Both of them closed their eyes and clearly felt the changes. Both of them were filled with joy. The two of them did not notice that the jade sea coral had suddenly changed its color. In an instant, it had become pure white. Under the cover of the faint blue gas, there was a ball of white spiritual energy violently rushing left and right. The blue gas had originally tightly wrapped around it, leaving not a single drop. Although the white gas was violent and agile, it could not rush out. But with Li Yuran's urging and Li Shang's absorption, the density of the blue qi became thinner and thinner, and the white qi became thicker and thicker. Gradually, the white qi began to overpower the host. There was only one last step before his dantian could recover. The old scars of decades had haunted Grand Preceptor Li for half his life. Now that they had recovered, how could he not be excited? Not ecstatic? Even though Grand Preceptor Li was used to seeing great winds and waves, he still felt that his mental state was a little unstable at this moment. Li Shang was overjoyed and said in a trembling voice, "Yuran, my dantian should recover soon." Li Yuran was ecstatic as she said, "Grandfather, the shackles that Jun Zhan Tian had placed on you can be removed from now on. My Li family will also never fall." Ha! Both grandfather and grandson smiled sincerely at the same time. Their smiles were filled with hope and longing, all of a sudden. Amidst this joy, an unforeseen event suddenly occurred. At the most critical moment when Grand Preceptor Li's dantian was about to recover, the completely different heaven and earth spiritual qi that Jun Moxie had injected earlier suddenly broke free from the shackles of the blue qi. Like an evil dragon that had suddenly broken free from its shackles, it followed the direction of the blue qi at lightning speed and charged forward with irresistible force. A wisp of abnormally violent and swift air current, with a "so" sound, escaped into Li Shang's recovering meridians like a ghost. Then, it barged its way into his dantian, which was about to fully recover, like a hot knife through butter. Caught off guard, Li Shang only felt a loud bang coming from his dantian. His face immediately turned deathly pale. The dantian that had almost fully recovered suddenly collapsed once again. It was as if a complete disc had been broken from his dantian. The cracks were like crisscrossing tree roots, rapidly spreading towards the surrounding meridians. Li Shang spat out a mouthful of blood with a "chi" sound. He lost all his senses and his body fell limply to the sky. "Grandpa!" Li Yuran cried out in shock. Her mind was in a mess. At the same time that Li Shang fell, the piece of jade coral exploded without any warning under the extreme entanglement of the two spiritual qi. Li Yuran, who was close by and worried about her grandfather, hurriedly stretched out her head to check. Immediately, her head and face were smashed by the fragments. She screamed, her head and face were covered in blood. "What's going on? Why? Why is this happening? Who can tell me what's going on?" Ah! Li Yuran could no longer maintain her poise. She looked up to the sky and screamed. At this moment, Li Yuran, who was usually as calm as Mount Tai, had a face full of panic, helplessness, worry, malevolence, and blood. She looked like an evil spirit. Jade coral. The jade coral was obviously useful. Why did it suddenly explode? Master promised it before, promised it before. Li Yuran did not care about the wounds on her face. She tore at her hair as if she had gone crazy. To be honest, even Jun Moxie himself did not know about the changes that had happened here. Jun Dashao would never have thought that the qi that he had inadvertently injected into the jade coral would achieve such a glorious result. Dashao's original intention was only to cause some damage. He could not stand Li Zhen's face. At most, he hoped that the spiritual qi would be able to destroy the jade coral. He felt that he couldn't open his eyes. Father, please calm down. Xiaoyi's absent-minded state has only just begun. It seems that there hasn't been any substantial progress between the two of them. There's still time. Dugu Wudi's words had thoroughly poked the hornet's nest. Dugu Zongheng flew into a rage. He raised his leg, and Dugu Wudi's tall and sturdy body was sent flying like a rubber ball. He stamped his feet and cursed, "You! Are you even talking like a human? What do you mean by there hasn't been substantial progress? Don't tell me that you want to make substantial progress. It's not too late. Do you want to wait until your daughter is pregnant before it's too late? Do you think that Jun Moxie, that son of a bitch, wouldn't do such a thing?" The more he spoke, the angrier he became. Dugu Zongheng grabbed his son, and started to madly beat him. Usually, Madame Dowager would have come out to mediate at such a time. However, this time, she just stood at the side and did not move at all. At this moment, she actually fanned the flames and added, "You deserve to be beaten. How did this old lady give birth to such a blind son?" Dugu Zongheng's anger subsided a little after he had madly beaten his son. His face turned black as he said, "This matter must stop. You take advantage of the time that Xiaoyi is accompanying the princess in the palace. Quickly resolve this matter for me. This old man will kick you until you explode if I hear any similar news again. Why are you still not going? Why do you want this old man to go personally?" Great General Dugu Wudi crawled up from the ground with a bloody nose and swollen face, and fled in panic. Dugu Wudi returned to his courtyard after he had eaten the old man's first meal. He was immediately thrown into chaos. First, he vented his anger at his wives. Then, he passed down an order: Dugu Ying, Dugu Xiong, Dugu Hao, Dugu Jia, Dugu Cheng, Dugu Shang, and Dugu Qian are to immediately return from the barracks outside the city. No mistakes are allowed. Military law, family law will be meted out for any delay. Great General Dugu had decided to start with Jun Moxie. That repulsive brat dared to seduce my daughter, and caused me to be taught a lesson by my father. Isn't he tired of living? Do you think that I won't dare to touch you because your grandfather is protecting you? Just because I got beaten up today, I'll peel off 3 layers of your skin. Not to mention that you've even provoked my precious Xiao Yi. Humph. Chapter 108. The 7 names mentioned by Dugu Wu Di were the next generation of the Dugu family. The names were given by Dugu Zongheng. The last character of the 7 names added up to Heroes and Legends Rush Forward. It was a very imposing name. Dugu Zongheng had originally planned to use this as the first half of the couplet. He had also prepared a second half: dragons, tigers, leopards, wolves fill the sky. He had been waiting for his 3 sons to make a second half of the couplet. But he had not expected that after these 7 sons, the family's baby would come out, Dugu Xiaoyi. Just as Dugu Zongheng was looking forward to it, there was no more news. This made Dugu Zongheng extremely depressed. He could only swallow the second half of the dragons, tigers, leopards, wolves fill the sky couplet. As for the wind and cloud general couplet, there was no need to mention it. A good couplet was useless. Naturally, Dugu Zongheng had been greatly disappointed in this matter. He had scolded his 3 sons for being good-for-nothings, and for not living up to his expectations. Naturally, although Dugu Zongheng was rude and unreasonable, he knew that his daughter-in-law was not someone he could casually scold. Therefore, he only scolded his sons. Of the 3 sons, only the eldest, Dugu Wudi, was in the capital. His other 2 sons, Dugu Wushang and Dugu Wutong, were guarding the east and south sides of the empire. They refused to come back no matter what. Actually, they had been beaten up by the old master, and there were repercussions from it. The generals of the empire had to have some dignity. With the title of guarding the border, they naturally didn't want to come back if they could. It wasn't that Dugu Wudi didn't want to go out and hide from the old man at home. Unfortunately, his 2 younger brothers were outside, and he really couldn't go out. Other than coming back every year for the old master and old lady's birthday, even if the old master asked him to, he would just pretend to be deaf and mute. And the 2 times they came back every year, Dugu Wudi and his son would not even be able to sober up before the 2 brothers had already slipped away. The other 2 sides of the Tianxiang Empire were guarded by Grandpa Jun's men. They had nothing to do with the Dugu family. Dugu Wudi felt very wronged. I am the eldest brother. Why should I have such a hard life? How long would he have to endure the days of being scolded every 3 days and beaten up every half a month? At the end of the day, I'm a general in my 40s with a son and a daughter, just as the Li family was in a gloomy mood and the Dugu family was furious. Jun Moxie, the instigator of one of the families and the main culprit of the other family, was drinking merrily with his grandfather. Jun Wui was dressed in a green robe. His Adam's apple kept moving up and down as he swallowed his saliva. This was according to Jun Dashao's doctor's advice. Jun Wui had just recovered from his injury, so he shouldn't drink alcohol for the time being. However, this grandfather and grandson pair were smacking their lips as if they were extremely satisfied. When he smelled the fragrance of the wine, Jun Wui almost couldn't hold it in anymore. Xia, I'm very curious about your martial arts and your strange heart sutra. Jun Zhantian tossed out a question as he drank his wine with relish. Even Jun Wui opened his eyes wide and pricked up his ears when he heard this sentence. This was because Jun Moxie's martial arts were too unimaginable. Both of them were very knowledgeable, but they had never seen or heard of any Xian Qi that could have such an effect. Not only could it heal injuries, it could also repel poison. Moreover, it didn't emit any light. Moreover, its power was incomparably great. Such a miraculous skill should be very famous in the Xian continent, but there had never been any news of it. This was too strange. Jun Moxie was silent for a while. After a long time, he said, "Grandfather, 3rd uncle, can you not ask about this? I really don't want to lie to you." "Oh, this old man understands." Jun Zhantian suddenly realized. The expert who taught you martial arts didn't want you to say it, right? Ha, many people have this kind of strange temperament. Besides, if this kind of miraculous martial arts were to spread, it would only bring you harm. The fewer people who know about it, the better. Ha, this old man won't ask. I won't ask. Xia has this kind of miraculous martial arts. Not only can we not ask, but we must also keep it a secret. Jun Wui nodded. Otherwise, who wouldn't covet this kind of miraculous martial arts? The consequences would be unimaginable if even a little bit of news were to leak out. That's right. No matter what, Xia is a descendant of our Jun family. This alone is enough. Jun Zhantian laughed heartily. He was very gratified. The way he looked at Jun Moxie became even more affectionate. Jun Moxie stared blankly. He didn't expect that before he could make up a reason, these two had already made up a perfect reason for him. Xia, your 3rd uncle has also recovered. What are your plans? Tell me. Jun Zhantian was in a good mood. The more he looked at his grandson, the more satisfied he became. He stroked his beard and asked. Plans? What plans can I have? Once third uncle recovers, won't I be free? I'll continue to be a debauchee, how good is that? June Moxie drank a mouthful of wine and continued to work on the wild boar meat on the table. His hands were greasy. Everything else will naturally be arranged by you, grandfather. However, there is one thing. The news of third uncle's recovery cannot be spread out in a short period of time. Especially now that he has advanced to heaven's stage, it cannot be spread out. On this point, grandfather, it's up to you. You can continue to wander around with a sad face. At the mention of this matter, Jun Zhantian frowned. He felt a little annoyed. He scolded, nonsense, this old man used to worry because of you two brats. Now that you, Mo Xia, have worked hard and Wu Yi has also recovered, what else do I have to worry about? All the worries of the past are gone. How can I continue to pretend? He said with a long sigh. It was not that he could not pretend, but Jun Zhantian was really tired of those days of frowning. In the past, he had to worry, but now he had to say that he was worried. How could he not be depressed? Then what should I do? Jun Moxie spread out his greasy hands. You just don't want to worry. That's easy to do. I'll go out and create some trouble for you. Making you frown all the time. For example, I'll smash the magnificent jewel hall, catch the 3 princes and beat them up, or kidnap a few women. You're looking for a beating. Jun Zhantian knew that he was joking, but he was still angry. That day, I still haven't settled the accounts with you about the magnificent jewel hall, and you actually brought it up yourself. Let me tell you, some things are really above the state apparatus. For example, the magnificent jewel hall. No matter what, you cannot provoke the magnificent jewel hall. Even if you reach the peak of Great Master Shenxian, the magnificent jewel hall is not something you can afford to provoke. Do you understand? Jun Zhantian's voice was very solemn, and the wording was quite harsh. What is the origin of the magnificent jewel hall? Jun Moxia's curiosity grew even stronger. Even the peak of Great Master Shenxian cannot provoke them. They are above the state apparatus. I can only tell you that the magnificent jewel hall is only the tip of the iceberg. But even so, it is enough to deter the world. There are also several great Master Shenxian masters. As for the deeper things, this old man is not very clear. I only know that you must not provoke them. Jun Zhantian sighed and looked at Jun Wui with some regret. Jun Wui's face twitched, and his eyes revealed a touch of pain. It was as if his whole soul was being stabbed at this moment. But in the blink of an eye, he calmed down. He sat calmly, but was much quieter than before. In that case, from now on, all the secret forces of the family will be handed over to Wu Yi. As for Mo Xia, you. Jun Zhantian pondered for a long time, but could not make up his mind. Finally, he gave up and said, you do what you need to do. When you have free time, help your third uncle. Jun Wui and Jun Moxie nodded. Jun Moxie reminded, grandfather, third uncle, before third uncle takes over the family's power, we must first completely clean up the spies in the family. Jun Mo Xia paused for a moment, and then stared at the two men. Third uncle's recovery is obviously a great thing for our Jun family. But, it's an additional variable for outsiders, and it'll increase the threat. Especially. Jun Mo Xia smiled faintly as he pointed his finger upwards. His meaning was self-evident. The secret forces of the Jun family, grandfather, may have been thoroughly cleaned up. There are no people from the other families. I can believe this. But there must still be people from the imperial family in the family. And grandfather, you also know about these people, right? I'm just turning a blind eye. Jun Moxie smiled, but now, it is a critical moment. So, we must cut them off. Jun Zhantian looked at his grandson in shock. Every word that Jun Mo Xia had said was the truth. He had guessed correctly. After a long while, Jun Zhantian bitterly twitched the corners of his mouth and said, "That's right, there are indeed people sent by the emperor. And they have been around for more than 10 years. Even for the Jun family, they have not done anything wrong. That is because the Jun family has never done anything to threaten the imperial family. Moreover, we have always been loyal to the imperial family. Of course, they do not need to report. But now, it is different. Although we are not disloyal, but once the news of us gets out, just suspicion will be enough to exterminate our family." Jun Moxie's eyes shone as he said word by word, "Now, even if they have betrayed the imperial family and become part of the Jun family, we cannot take this risk. Now is not the time to be soft-hearted. If we do not act decisively, we will only suffer." Jun Zhantian sighed. The wrinkles on his old face seemed to have deepened. After a long time, he said, "You are right. I will give a list of names to the two of you. As for what to do, I will leave it to the two of you to decide. There is no need to inform me." He stood up and left with heavy steps. "Xia, isn't this a little too cruel? Your grandfather cannot bear to do this. Can we?" Jun Wui frowned, a look of struggle appeared on his face. Jun Wui wouldn't have hesitated to attack an enemy. But, he couldn't bear to attack a man who had made countless contributions to the Jun family. Even if they knew that they were spies sent by the imperial family to spy on the Jun family, but they had still made great contributions to the Jun family. You're tuning in to the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.